What's up, people? This is Difference Makers live on Buzzer. Shout out to Kendall Stewart, who joins me as always every Thursday, 6 p.m., talking NBA draft. This is an NBA draft recap show, so we're making this a special episode that we're also posting to other platforms. So if you're seeing us on YouTube, you're seeing us on X, you're seeing us on Instagram, shout out to those checking us out. This is a Buzzer exclusive show where we talk NBA draft. We've had a very fun, long, month and a half, 2 months, pretty much talking about the NBA draft, and it all culminates with the draft actually happening and all of the scenarios we were talking about playing out, and we got to see a ton of major storylines come out of this draft, not just for just the actual prospects in the draft, but also storylines that will impact the NBA and veterans that are going to be on other teams now because of some of the impact moves made in this draft. So, Kendall, I thought it was an eventful 2 nights. I thought, in many ways, some of the future of what this league will look like, in many ways, I think was previewed in how the draft went in terms of like the lack of talent in the second round. No offense to the guys drafted in the second round. I think how many teams maneuvered to get first round picks and how difficult it was to trade up in this draft when you're talking about some of those top 10 picks. So plenty to get to on this show, Kendall, but I'm happy to wrap a bow on draft season with this recap episode.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly an interesting draft. Like you said, wasn't a ton of movement on night one of the NBA draft. There was, the entirety of the second round was movement, and so we'll talk about that later in the show. But yeah, it was a very interesting draft because, like you said, some trends on where the league may be headed were highlighted in this draft. And look, we've talked about it ad nauseum for weeks now, really for months, that this is one of the best drafts the NBA has seen coming into the league in over a decade. So,
Yep.
I think we saw that on display this week in terms of the excitement around some of the teams and what they were able to accomplish this week.
Absolutely, man. And I'm excited to get down to business and talk about all the big storylines coming out of it. And of course, it begins with what happened at number one. So AJ DeBanza does indeed go number one to the Washington Wizards. There was talk about, how close was it between him and Peterson. The Wizards, I think, tried to keep it close to the vest as possible. But as we heard last night, maybe it's been, maybe it's whatever. But the reporting from Shams Rainey is essentially that they had landed on DeBanza being the pick for a while now, and we're basically trying to keep it under wraps at this point. But they were sold on DeBanza. DeBanza now slides in, playing small forward for this team that is a Washington team that is intriguing. Are they good? I think is a interesting question to ask, and I'm not sure that I have a straight answer for you from that standpoint. But I think when you consider the money they gave to Trae Young to be their franchise point guard, they are hoping to bring back Anthony Davis. And now you have AJ DeBanza sliding at 3. They already have Alex Sarr. They already got some of the young guys they've drafted a couple of years. Do you feel like now with DeBanza, the Wizards are an impact player in the East in year one?
I think that's got to be the goal. I think, I thought Shams' report at the end of night one, where he said that, like you said, Washington sort of viewed DeBanza as a Cooper Flag level, transcendent, generational type prospect. I think that's a fair evaluation if you're the Wizards. These are guys that, Flag and DeBanza have been compared on the grassroots scene for half a decade at this point. It's been going back years, and they were always 1A, 1B in many respects, along with Cam Boozer and Darren Peterson. And so, yeah, I think if you're the Wizards, you got to be super excited. I think what's going to be interesting for DeBanza in his rookie season, a lot of people are going to talk about rookie of the year and, who's the leader in the odds for that coming out of this draft. And I wonder what's the role going to look like for AJ in year one, because this is a guy that in high school, in USA basketball, FIBA play, obviously in college at BYU has always been the number one option. That's not going to be the case anymore. The ball's not going to be in his hands. He's not the best scorer on his team. He might not be the second or third best scorer on his team, frankly. And that's going to be an adjustment because his skill set, his athleticism, he can shoot it. He's great in transition. Those skills you feel like are great in terms of a guy that's going to be able to scale down year one in the NBA playing next to Trae Young and Anthony Davis. But is that something that he wants to do? And is that something that the Wizards are going to want him to do? And is there something Wizards fans are going to want to see? Are they going to want to see AJ Debance standing in the corner setting screens, for Anthony Davis and Trae Young while those guys have the ball in their hands and spacing the floor? Like, they're going to want to see him with the ball in his hand. He's the number one pick in the draft. So that's going to be, I think, the most interesting dynamic that the Wizards are going to have to balance is balancing this kid as a number one pick in face of the franchise while also understanding that this is still Anthony Davis's team and this is still Trae Young's team.
Yeah, and it's a balance that is not one we see most teams try to do. Like I mentioned earlier, this feels a little reminiscent of when Chris Webber was drafted by the Wizard, or he was drafted by the Magic, but then went to the Warriors, and they were a team that had some talent and guys that have played on the Dream Team and guys that have been already early stars in the NBA. And he went there and it didn't work at all. He was traded in a year. I'm not at all saying that that's going to be AJ Devance's future. There's a lot of other reasons why that didn't work that involved him not getting along with Don Nelson. But I think it does speak to just the delicacy that is working with veteran players who are high priced, who, let's be real, like may have seen their best days. Like we may have definitely seen the best days of Anthony Davis for sure. Trae Young is a guy that his value is never, I guess, it's hard to say his value is lower because the guy just had a max contract. But I think the perception of him has never been lower. That I think is fair to say around the league outside of whatever Washington thought. So how do you balance that in terms of like who those guys actually are at this point and understanding the need to continue to develop AJ Debance and allow him to flourish in the way that he needs to flourish, which is they're hoping he is a perennial 25 to 30 point scorer in this league, a guy who's challenging for scoring titles and is a focal point of the offense. The truth of the matter is he's a rookie. He's 19 years old, and he's going to be playing with guys who are going to expect to get touches, expect to be part of the team, and may warrant that because we know with even rookies, we saw Cooper Flag last year that it was a little bit of a slow start. Like it's not necessarily always just a rocket ship to the moon in terms of how you start your career. So there certainly could be hiccups here and there, but I wonder how will they navigate working through those hiccups. And also, as we mentioned on the show in previewing the draft, whatever mandate may be there to win games. Because that's another aspect, too, that we got to talk about. Is, like, are they going to be willing to play through Devance's mistakes as much as maybe they should? Will they maybe kind of use Trae Young and Anthony Davis kind of as a crutch for a team that's trying to win when the overall goal, yes, they want to win games, they should want to win games, but the overall goal should always still be number one priority, making sure AJ Devance's development is going down in a way that makes sense. These are all delicate things that the Wizards are not going to have to face.
What do you imagine is a realistic target or goal in terms of a stat line for Devance in year one?
I think playing on that team, I mean, it's so weird because I really don't even know what kind of style Brian is trying to play because he's been trying to lose games for 3 years in a row. So I'm like trying to figure out what is their style. I don't know. So I'm taking what Trae Young has simply been good at and how they typically get up and down and the team that they have. I think he should average about at least 18. I think he should average 18. If you can average 18, 5, and he's not really, I don't think he was really an assist guy, but 18, 5 to 6 rebounds and 3 assists. I think you look at that and say that's a pretty good rookie year. But like, could he average 20? Sure, but I don't know. Again, what is
how many games is Anthony Davis play?
Yeah, how many games is Anthony Davis playing? How many shots is Trae Young taking on night in night out basis? Whether Davis is there or not, like those are all questions I don't have. The NBA is a high scoring league, so I feel like he should be able to get numbers that will put him. And we'll talk later about Rookie of the Year conversations. That will certainly put him in discussion to win Rookie of the Year, but the reality is, and it's not. It's a similar thing with Peterson too. Like this is a very interesting class. Like they got a lot. You got 2 guys drafted 1 and 2, who are going to be playing on teams with like all stars. One guy's playing on teams with Hall of Famers. Like it's it's a very unique situation, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. It's not to say that they shouldn't have drafted those guys, because of course I would have taken those guys. Those guys were number one, number two on my
It,
board.
it,
But it's a unique situation we don't typically see.
Yeah, and it speaks to, we talk about trends around the league. It speaks to, obviously, we've talked about the lottery situation and how they've obviously evened out the odds, even going back a few years. But I mean, these teams were both terrible, but also it speaks to just the overall parity of the NBA now in the second apron era. A lot of these teams can't just load up on star talent, and so even the terrible teams that we teams that we view as terrible have guys that are pretty good, and that
Yeah,
rookies aren't going to just come in and be by far the best players on their team. I'm not
yeah,
sure if there's any team in the league that AJ Devanza would have walked in, or Darren Peterson would have walked in, and it would have been no contest. They're the best player on the team. I mean, again, you have teams like Chicago and Memphis, where they may have been the number one option on
right,
offense,
right.
depending on how team they would have built their team out. Um, but again, you can't get much worse than the Washington Wizards. Of course, the Wizards, added Trae Young and added Anthony Davis, and in the case of Utah, Markkanen sat out a whole lot, and of course, they added Jaren Jackson as well. So yeah, it's a very interesting time that we're in the NBA in that regard.
When we did our mock draft, you were selecting number two for the Jazz, and you took Boozer. When we did our pre-show, you kind of said, "Listen, I think the tea leaves suggested it's going to be Peterson," and it was Darren Peterson. Do you think that there is any chance that the Jazz will regret taking Peterson here at number two over Cam Boozer, who you had as your number two player on your board?
Yeah, number one.
Number one, actually. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that this was a mistake personally.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, I like Darren Peterson. I got him third on my board. I don't think it's some colossal mistake that um, is going to come back to bite them too much, because again, they wound up getting a good player in their own right. Um, I just wonder about the kind of team they're trying to build, and whether or not the accumulation of the talent, like, is this about building a team that makes sense, or are they just accumulating talent and assets to maybe try and get stars there at some point? Because I'm not sure if the team that they have built is a team that's truly going to be, I'm not gonna say capable of winning games, because they'll win games next season. I think Will Hardy's a good coach, and again, they have plenty of talent, but I don't think that this is a team that um, is capable of winning games at a significant level, and in the postseason. I like Darren Peterson. Again, he's a big time scorer. Um, I still am a little bit confused about the conversation in terms of the evaluation of Darren Peterson. We can talk all we want about, um, of course, the injury situation and
Mm-hmm.
all of the kind of uncertainty around that. But just from a basketball standpoint, I'm not as sold on Peterson being, you know, the Kobe Bryant comp. This guy is going to come in and he's going to average 25 as a rookie. Those kind of conversations, I'm still a bit, still tempering expectations a little bit in that regard. And so that's why, if I'm Utah, I don't know if the archetype is worth what they put into this asset.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're the number two pick in the draft and what's supposed to be an historic draft. Um, and for what they need, I don't know if they necessarily needed a volume scoring two guard, because that's what I think he is. I know he said he wants to play point guard. Um, it's certainly a good situation for him to come in, and Keontae George is kind of a combo guard in his own right.
Yeah,
It's not
George
like
in
he's
theory
playing with,
can definitely move to the two. He's been playing the point, but I don't really think of
yeah,
him as a natural point either.
yeah. So I think he's landed in a good spot for him to be able to have the ball in his hands if he's good enough. But he's going to have to play better than he did at Kansas. I think there's just been a lot of excusing some of the stuff that happened at Kansas and saying, oh, well, it was a bad He was dealing with a lot of the injury stuff and just a lot of the hoopla around it. It was just a bad environment, and you got to go back and watch him in high school. But I don't know. To me, I agree that the draft. I've said it for years that I agree the draft is more than a 1 year cycle in terms of the
Yeah.
scouting process. It's more than we just look to what they did their freshman seasons. But for what we saw from Darren Peterson, which was good, I'm not saying he was a bad player or he's not worth a top 5 pick based on what we saw his freshman season. There were times where he looked like the best player in college basketball.
You don't think he was worth a top 5 pick based on what you saw his freshman year, or are you saying that he was? I'm sorry.
No. I'm not saying he's not worth a top 5 pick.
Oh, gotcha.
I just based off of it's this pick in particular for this team. He looked like a guy that may be better off on a team that's like really bad, that's desperate for scoring, that has 20 shots available for like I don't know if that's why I always felt the Grizzlies were a better fit, because if they get rid of John Morant, they're gonna have plenty of shots available for Darren Peterson, and again, he's gonna have the ball in his hands. I think Utah is gonna be slightly better. And look, I love the fit of Boozer in Memphis, and we'll talk about that. But I just think Boozer, even though there would have been a log jam in the front court, and that's certainly something they're gonna have to talk about as well. I just like him better long term, so I'm not as worried about the fit in the immediacy.
I'll be honest, this fit is growing on me more, not so much from a basketball standpoint, because I think you're right. I don't, like I told you before, we talked about it in the pre-show. Like, who's going to, like, besides Jared Jackson, like, who's going to defend? Like, who's going to screen? Like, the build of this team is weird. Ironically, I think the T-Wolves are also building a team similarly, where I said before that this feels like a Nike EYBL team. The T-Wolves, after the trade for LaMelo Ball, also feel kind of like that. Like, there's basketball things with this team that I don't know if I quite get. And as you mentioned, I think you make a good point about the accumulation of assets that's happening over there rather than actually building a basketball team. What I will say, though, in defending the Jazz is I actually like Peterson. I'm starting to like the idea of Peterson not going to some, like, dumpster fire. Because I think what we saw at Kansas, whatever it was, and, he has said, again, and I'm not trying to say he's lying, but, like, he said he was dealing with these full body cramps, and he was having trouble dealing with
overdose
the entire year.
Overdose of creatine,
right, and all those different things, right. So, regardless of whether the case may be, we saw the frustration that Bill Self had. That was real. Like, we could talk about what he was going through. Bill Self clearly was pissed off about having to deal with this thing with him and not knowing if he's going to play or when he's going to play or how he's going to play. I think if he would have just went to some other team, questions, again, if he went to, I mean, it's hard to say, but, like, okay, let's take the Grizzlies, for example, or one of those really, really bad teams, like the Nets, maybe. Like, maybe some of this, the concerns you have, if those concerns that we have are real, that he is somebody that is going to throw his weight around and think he can kind of play whenever he wants or whatever, like, you're able to do that a lot easier on them terrible teams. It's harder to look in the eye of an all-star like Lowry Markkanen or a rising star or like Keontae George or a guy who's been a defensive player of the year type player in Jaren Jackson and say, oh yeah, I'm not playing, or like, it's just hard to do stuff like that. And Danny Ainge and the coach is whatever, but like Danny Ainge in that front office, I think there's just a level of seriousness that I think might be good for him. That he's not going to just come in. We saw like Ace Bailey like tried to pull that stuff, and eventually he just had to kind of fall in line. Like at certain points, like, you're not good enough to pull this crap, and he wasn't. So eventually he fell in line, and it took him a while, but eventually he played well there. I kind of think this could end up being the same thing where he was trying to, and it was. I'm not begrudging him like playing the game of the draft order where maybe you try to avoid Utah initially. That's the draft game. Everybody does that. I'm not even talking about that. But like, I think he's a situation where maybe he gets there, he realizes, hey, listen, you know what? This coach kind of knows what he's talking about. This front office is pretty good. Oh crap, that's a defensive player of the year. Oh crap, that's an all-star. Like, I can't just.
They got a lot of pros in that locker room.
Right, they got real pros. They got guys. They have a lot of young guys still, but like they also have enough pros where I think it might be good for him to be in that environment to see what it's like to be a pro. Because what people have talked about, that's why it was so ironic, like his the weird freshman year was that he is known to have like this insane work ethic. Like the workouts him and his dad put him throughout his
You
childhood and
watch his
stuff.
game.
Yeah,
You
if you
watch
watch
his
his
game.
game,
He has to be.
you can't have a bad work ethic to be that skilled. It's impossible. So we know he has that work ethic, but again, what was going on with his body, not pushing himself, whatever the case may be. Again, I think it's a little, if you have those concerns are real. I think it's easier it's harder to pull that stuff on this team, which is why I'm kind of the fit's kind of growing on me that he went to a team like Utah where he actually will be playing in real games. That's another thing too. Like, this is a team that I think is going to try to compete for a playing spot and will probably be in the mix. It's, again, harder to pull that stuff again. I know he did it at Kansas, but I just think it's a different energy. I'm starting to feel more and more like perhaps this will be something that, like, we're going to talk about. Hey, his freshman year was weird, but we're kind of going to forget about that because he'll go out there, average 18, 19, and play well for a team that's competing for a playoff spot.
I will be very excited to watch him during the Utah Summer League, and then of course Vegas. Yeah. And of course they'll have Ace Bailey as well, who I think will also probably look very good after having a full rookie season where he really came on late down the stretch. It's exciting if you're a Jazz fan to add a talent like this, no matter where you were picking. To me, when I think about the idea of them accumulating talent and just stockpiling it and not worrying too much about the fit. This is a guy again who's going to look pretty good again because he's a good basketball player. I'm not suggesting that he's going to come in and be some bust that's going to look like Markelle Fultz is in Philly. He's going to forget how to play basketball. Assuming he's healthy, I think he's going to come in there and he's going to look like Darren Peterson for the most part. At least what I think Darren Peterson is. I'm not sure if he's going to come in and average 23 points a game or anything like that, but he's going to be effective. He's going to be able to score the basketball. And whether it be him or Bailey or George or any of these guys like that, then becomes attractive when the next superstar guy becomes available potentially. And you may say, again, if Luka Doncic says, I don't like what's going on in Lakerland, maybe the Jazz say we can move Darren Peterson for Luka, and that becomes a trade that they can make. Like, I think in theory, especially given the perception around the league, he might be a more attractive trade option than even Cam Boozer in that regard. Now, of course, how they play in their rookie and their second year and all that, how they develop, we'll tell that story. But he'll be in a position where he's gonna play well. I mean, if he does, it's not only about what he does for your team, but potentially what his value will be in the open market.
You mentioned Cam Boozer. He goes number 3 to the Memphis Grizzlies. They also took Kareem Lopez later in a trade. When you talked about the scenarios that could have worked out for the Grizzlies, this is kind of what I talked about, where I said that Cam Boozer he's the anti-Ja Morant, which I think is what that team, that community badly wants. Like, he has to be good, he's got to be able to produce, but I do think that there's going to be an immediate welcoming of the level of professionalism he's going to bring, even at 19 years old, and even as a former college freshman coming into the NBA. I'm actually really intrigued by the fit with him and Zach Edey. Zach Edey has had second year health issues were a major issue for him this past season, so that's going to be something to follow. But I do think there's questions I have in terms of whether or not, as much physicality and size they'll have, will they have the quickness to match some teams. But on the flip side, they'll be able to brutalize teams potentially in the paint with these two guys together. And they're both so skilled that that could be a very dynamic pairing in the Western Conference. And the Grizzlies are a team that is complete rebuild mode. I don't think that this is them going from, one of the worst teams in the league to jumping right into competing for a playoff spot next year. But I think, you trade away a franchise four-man and Jaren Jackson Jr., and you're able to draft Cam Boozer, who, while he won't bring the defensive prowess, I think has a much higher offensive ceiling. That's something I think for the Grizzlies fans to be excited about. It feels like this is becoming a little bit of a return to form of who the Grizzlies have been. When they were great, it was Marc Gasol and Zach Randolph brutalizing people in the paint. And the fact that they could maybe bring some of that back with Cam Boozer and Edey, again, if you're a Grizzlies fan, long way to go, but I think a good start.
Man, look, obviously, I love Cam Boozer. I got him number one on my board. I think that's a great pick. Obviously, he's the best guy available. Um, and to be able to get him at three, I think is quite the win. It's certainly a fit into the culture they've tried to build. EJ, I love Zach Edey coming out of Purdue.
That's right.
I think the fit is. I think it's a great fit. I think you're talking about two highly productive guys. You're right about Edie's health being a big question for what his impact's going to be next season. But uh, I, I think if he is healthy, I think there's a team that's going to play through Edie primarily still, and then Edie plus Boozer in the front court. I think it's going to be one of the best young front courts in the NBA. Of course, you throw in Cedric Coward and
Yeah.
Gigi Jackson still there, and again they took Kareem Lopez, who the guy I had 13th on my board. They were able to get him at 21 in a trade down situation. I think the Grizzlies had a home run of a draft. I even love the Richie Saunders pick in the second round.
Yeah.
Is a guy that I think we both had a first round grade on, especially when he's healthy. Big time shooter. Uh, when I thought they took Sturts at 16, I was, as a guy that loved Bennett Sturts, I was a little confused because I was like, he fits how they want to play, but they already got Cam Spencer, and it felt a little duplicitous. But then when they traded the pick and ended up with Lopez, I was like, this makes, I think, a little bit more sense for the team, that the roster that they have. I do wonder, though, what is going to be the answer at point guard.
Yeah.
Because, again, John Morant is not there. He's there now. We'll see if he's there.
By the way, I mean, it seems like there is no market for him. So I don't know I have no idea what's gonna happen to John Morant. Like, I think the not to disrespect the reporters out there, but it felt like the Grizzlies were putting out the bad signal that John Morant trade was imminent because he was going to be traded, and I'm sure they want to trade him. But then, like, in order for a trade to happen, two parties gotta want to invest, and with LaMelo Ball being the big point guard that got traded, now a lot of, and the guy that seemed like people wanted, it seems like investing teams are like, you know what, now we're good. We'll just go with what we have. So I don't know. I don't know what comes next with John Morant. I don't know if a buyout is something that they have to now consider. I don't know if bringing him back is something that they want to consider. Again, they certainly tried to put the bat signal to all these insiders that he was going to be gone via trade, but I don't see a home for John Morant. So that is an interesting development because I think he's got to go, but they also don't have a point guard outside of him, and they don't seem to have any people that are willing to take the plunge. Like, part of me wonders, do you call back Orlando? I know you're not getting. Do you say, hey, listen, we know the Jalen Suggs thing hasn't necessarily worked out as great. Could you maybe apply him for John Moran? Like, would the Magic even be interested in that? I don't know. I don't know where they go with Ja, but that is a big question for this Grizzlies team.
And another reason why it's a big question is the system that Tomas Isolo wants to play, because that's what they're going all in on. When you get a guy like Boozer, and you take Lopez, you move off of John Morant, you're saying we are going all in on this European style of basketball, having two great bigs in Boozer and Edey.
Yep.
And saying we're going to play a super fast tempo, but you're going to need a point guard.
A ball movement. Infused offense.
Yeah.
Not
a lot of ball movement. And you're going to need a point guard that can push the pace in transition. And they don't have, like, they thought John Morant could be a good fit in that system if he was willing to play it,
Right.
But it seemed like he wasn't too interested in whatever style of play they were playing. They've got to find somebody that's dynamic to be the head of the snake, and they don't have that. There weren't too many guys in this draft where they were picking. Christian Anderson could have been a very good fit in the system they want to run.
They passed on LeBaron Philon. I mean, he was
Philon's another guy that could have been interesting as well. But it makes you wonder if they have a plan at the position. And it's a veteran guy and not a young guy, but that's something they're gonna have to figure out because as good as this team is, I like Cam Spencer. He's not a starting point guard in the NBA. No. They're gonna have to figure out, Scottie Pippen Jr., another guy, like, good player, but not a starting point guard in the NBA. You're gonna have to figure out a real, if you're serious about trying to win games next year. They might not be. But again, in this era of no, this era of no, no tanking and the lottery being the way it is, you don't really have much incentive to intentionally be bad. I mean, if you can
Right.
put together a decent roster, it's like the NFL now. You might as well might as well take a shot if you can. I didn't realize that the second round is going to be a snake draft next year, where
Yep.
if you're 16, you're going to be first in the second round.
Yeah.
It feels a little excessive, but I'm like, yeah. I mean, now there's really no incentive to be in the worst team in the league.
Exactly.
If you wind up with the ninth pick in the draft and then the ninth pick in the second round as the worst team in the league.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so the Grizzlies, this is the point guard question is a major question. They didn't figure that out. I didn't hate. I didn't. Listen. Phylon was falling, and I was kind of wondering what the hell was going on. He went probably right before a crash out would happen for me, being like these GMs don't know what the hell they're doing. And Philly ended up taking a 22. I think if you're the Grizzlies, I do wonder if that was a Phylon spot. I think Lopez definitely makes a fit, like you said, for how they want to play. I do wonder about some of the redundancy of like now. I mean, this is a front court team now, which again, they're establishing an identity, but you already got Cedric Howard. Now you got Lopez, you got Boozer, you got Edie, and then remember Santi Aldama is still there, like, and he's been their starting center basically. Like what, at a certain point they need to address the backcourt again. Maybe that's something they're going to plan to do in free agency and the draft. But I'm interested to see what happens with Boozer. Again, I like the fit from a personality standpoint and everything. The guy I had ahead of him though was Caleb Wilson, who went to Chicago at 4. And they also had Texas's Daylon Swain. I thought the Bulls had one of the better nights. I don't know how you felt, but I think when you talked about the Caleb Wilson pick, that was a pick that, I mean, I feel like we talked about in the first episode of Difference Makers about me saying like this is a pick that has to happen. This is a fit that has to happen after the lottery happened, and it was the worst secret ever, maybe in NBA draft, that this is where they were gonna go. So Caleb Wilson, I think his mentality, I think his vibe, I think his game all fits Chicago and what they're looking for. And then that second pick with Daylon Swain, I actually liked a lot as well. Because this is a team, for better or for worse, that is centered around Josh Giddey being the hub of the offense. And if you're gonna have Josh Giddey be the hub of the offense, you're gonna need somebody who can run the floor, somebody who can score without necessarily having plays drawn up for them. And Daylon Swain is the kind of athlete I think that could absolutely thrive playing next to a point guard like Giddey. Now, we could have conversations about whether or not you could ever win anything legitimate with Giddey as a point guard, but that's not the conversation for today. The conversation is based, especially with the draft and how it shook out. I think the conversation right now is based on the guys that are available. Does this team start to make a little bit more sense? You start to see a little bit of division in Chicago. I thought Chicago did pretty well.
Yeah, I mean, look, their new president of basketball operations, Bryson Graham, came over from Atlanta. Before that, he was in New Orleans, and he was known as the guy who brought in Herb Jones and the guy who brought in Trey Murphy, and he came to Chicago, and Dyson Daniels as well in New Orleans, and then helped bring those guys to Atlanta. Some of those guys, a guy like Dyson Daniels and Nickeil Alexander-Walker, bring those guys to Atlanta with him. It's we've known for a while that that's been the style of play that he's wanted to bring to Chicago, and bring. Obviously, we knew the Caleb Wilson fit made sense with his physical profile and his athleticism and his toughness, and when you now couple that with also bringing in Daylon Swain, who, if you're talking about trying to find the closest thing to a Herb Jones in this draft, it's certainly Daylon Swain. Again, guy's going to be a big-time defender. He's athletic. He's physical. Can handle the ball on the offensive end as well, can kind of facilitate. So I think that is a fit for what they're trying to build. I think the big question for them, similar to kind of the Memphis Grizzlies, is you're going to have to figure out the backcourt scoring, right? We thought when we were talking about the Bulls that when you had that second pick, would they focus on finding another point guard potentially?
Yeah.
Finding somebody to replace what they lost with Kobe White. And they weren't interested in that. And I understand, again, Bryson Graham's trying to instill a culture. He's trying to instill an imprint and an identity in this roster and in this organization. Drafting Christian Anderson doesn't necessarily do that. Drafting LeBaron Philon doesn't necessarily do that. There were some people that maybe wanted Cam Carr in that spot. We'll talk about Cam Carr later. I'm interested
Yeah.
what the deal was with him. But
Yeah.
Again, Swain, if you were looking for a guy to fit the moniker that they've been trying to live by in this pre-draft cycle, at 15, he was the best guy available. So
Yeah.
for that, so
Yeah.
I don't hate it. Again, would I have operated that way? Maybe not, but I can't fault Bryson Graham for wanting to again instill a culture and set an identity in Chicago.
Yeah, I think that the Bulls, again, it's hard for some of these teams because it's so far away, and it's weird to talk about these teams that are not even at number one and number two. It's so weird that the 1 and 2 teams are teams that compete for like the playoffs, and then like the teams after them are like teams that, listen, man, it's gonna be some years before they're any good. So it's weird, but I do think that the the semblance of what they're trying to build is starting to make a little bit of sense, right? They do need to add some shooting. That is going to be a huge thing because I don't think Wilson or Swain are really going to add 3-point shooting. Wilson is a good mid-range shooter. Swain is a decent shooter, but I wouldn't consider him a knockdown guy. So they're going to have to add some shooting, especially around Giddey. So that's a big question mark they're going to have to fill. But there's multiple avenues, right? You don't have to fill everything via the draft. This is where free agency, this is where trades come in. They're certainly not a team that's high up there in terms of salary, luxury tax, things like that. So they should be able to spend some money. Colin Sexton's guy's a free agent. In theory, they could bring him back. I don't know how they viewed him in the short time he was there.
Simons.
But those, yeah, Simons is someone in theory they could also bring back. Yeah, I don't know how they viewed him in the short time he was there. So those are questions that we're gonna have to continue to see. But I thought the Bulls had a good night. Keaton Vogler is being the first point guard taken off the board if we don't count Darren Peterson as a point guard, which maybe is debatable. Some people may not count Waggle as a point guard, but we're counting him as a point guard here. And he was taken off the board at 5 to the Los Angeles Clippers. And the conversation around the Clippers is kind of it's kind of gotten weird because they took Wagler and said, okay, everyone kind of expected that. Now what? And it's like, well, they want Kawhi, but maybe they will still trade him. Like, I don't really know that to me it sounds like they're gonna trade Kawhi Leonard. I don't know how you feel, but just the weird wording of like they want to keep Kawhi Leonard, but Kawhi is very open to potentially landing in like Detroit or like San Antonio or Toronto. I'm like, wait, what? So it should have been the end of the first sentence should have ended the report, and yet the report, I think that was from Jake Fisher, continued on with other teams. I'm like, wait, though, why are we talking about other teams? So I will say this: if the Clippers are agreeing to move on from Kawhi Leonard, number one, that would be the best thing for all parties. Like we talked about this throughout the entire draft process that the Clippers, in terms of what they were going to do, I felt like was very hard to figure out. Not in the sense that, like, again, the pick that happened was the one people most likely were looking at, but just there's a clear avenue that this is a team that needs to begin rebuilding, but you just don't know what the appetite is of that because of their owner and because of Kawhi Leonard's, like, seemingly insistence on staying in Southern California. It feels like, at least on Kawhi's side, that has loosened greatly in the last 24 hours. So that makes me wonder, okay, has a conversation been had, and this is a precursor to them rebuilding? And if that is the case, I will go back to what I said before. Like, if you were really truly going to rebuild this thing, I just wonder. And we're going to talk about Darius Cuff a lot in this segment of this show. I just wonder if even keeping Darius Garland made sense, right? Like to me, Acuff was my best point guard. Keaton Wagler was my second best point guard. Wagler is really good, and I love his shooting touch, love the size. But I just wonder if the Clippers settled for second best because of a guy that was there that really shouldn't be changing life for you in a draft. Darius Garland's really good. I think he's an all-star caliber guard. But his lack of health and his defensive issues are just things that will always make me wonder if this was the right move. This guy, Wagler, is by far the best fit, given the guys they have. I'm just not sure if the guys they have are guys who should be on the team, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Look, I would have loved the fit of Ty Lue coaching Darius Acuff. I think that's a guy he would have loved coaching.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the Garland thing again, like you said, maybe the Garland thing made it impossible. Like you said, I don't know if I care if I've got Garland at that point.
Right.
But I mean, we're seeing point guards fly left and right, in terms
Mm-hmm.
of the trade market and things of
Yeah.
that nature. I think there would
Yeah.
have been
Somebody
teams that
would have
would have
wanted
said,
him. Somebody would have wanted him.
yeah, yeah, like San Antonio probably would have said, we'll give you De'Aaron Fox for Darius
Yeah.
Garland if you want him.
Seriously.
Um, but yeah, to me, I like the Wagler pick for the Clippers because I think the Clippers got to shoot for the moon, frankly, and I think Wagler is. I know Michael Brown had a little bit of that boom or bust thing attached to him, and that label attached to him. I think Wagler had a lot of that as well in terms of there's a version of this outcome where he's the best. He's maybe the best player in this draft. Um, and there's also a version where maybe we were hoodwinked, and he had a great freshman season, and obviously he cashed in, and that's it. That is what it is. I don't I don't see it as that personally. I think the
Mm-hmm.
kid's gonna be really good. But if you're the Clippers, it almost feels like, and I don't want to throw this comp out there, although there's some similarities. But like you almost wonder if because of his lack of athleticism, his very skill base. You mentioned the shooting touch.
Yep.
You wonder if this is them almost like in '09, right? They had the number one pick in the draft. They took Blake Griffin, and they didn't take Steph Curry, right? And nobody begrudged
Mm-hmm.
them for not taking Steph Curry at that time. But you wonder if we look back in 5 to 7 years, and if Wagner's game completely comes together, and
Right.
that he's not a fluke, and he's not he just got hot for 1 year. Because again, he was doing this all season, right? This wasn't
Yeah.
like, he just came on the last 3 weeks of the season,
No
got
question.
hot, and then turned that into a lottery
Yep.
pick. He was the best freshman in the Big Ten all year, and one of the best guards in college basketball all season. Who's to say that if in 5 years his game doesn't fully come together, and he's one of the best shooters in the NBA, and he's one of the best scorers in the NBA. And if that's the case, he just has the highest ceiling of all these guys that were available.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think if you're the Clippers, I don't begrudge them for taking that chance. If again they did all their background work and were comfortable with the mental makeup, comfortable with Wagler in general, comfortable with obviously his development path, knowing that he wasn't a top guy coming out of high school, and understanding that the risk that comes associated with that. I don't know if you heard Lawrence Frank. He had a really good press conference after the fact. He had a
I
really
did
good
see.
monologue, kind of talking about Wagler. But they seemed they did they poked and prodded at every aspect of Wagler, and why they think that he was the perfect fit for them. But yeah, to me, I like the pick. I also liked them getting Nick Martinelli in the second round, and I think they
Mm-hmm.
signed Fletcher Lawyer, who's a guy that I targeted as a sleeper in this draft. They signed him as a UDFA. They got Bob
Yeah.
Miller
They
as
also got Bobby
well.
Miller. Yeah. I'm a big Bobby Miller guy.
Yeah, so I think the Clippers had a good draft in terms of trying to rebound from what seemed like they kind of seemed like a directionless, kind of just hapless franchise in the last 8 to 9 months, since the whole Pablo Torre finds out investigation into
Yeah.
aspiration. But I think this is a good reset for them. Again, it's all going to come down to Wagler,
And
right?
and
Like it's all going to
it
come
feels like
down
a
to Wagler.
reset is finally happening. Like it feels like and I listen. We're in the media, right? So we want answers today, yesterday. But it just felt like this was a team that probably was like prolonging this for a little while, and like it got into
Really,
like
let's
a
get to the All Star game. Let's make
right.
sure we get past that.
I know, and it's like for me, I'm just like, what is the freaking direction of this team that clearly can't win the championship and their best player is 35 years old? Like, what the hell are they doing? And now it's like, okay, you're hearing they may be more open to dealing Kawhi than maybe they initially, talked about. And Okay, you go Wagler, and again, we could argue about whether or not they took the second best point guard, but okay, there's a direction. They're going with Wagler and Garland, who is still a young player. So okay, you start to see some things, some semblance of what they're trying to do. It just, I wanted to see some direction again. I think we are starting to see that. Again, I will probably be one of the few people that will raise questions about the Clippers pick. Everyone seems to be raising questions about the Nets picking Michael Brown Jr. over Darius Acuff at 6. Can I defend the Nets here for a little bit?
Wow.
Now, I will say this. Acuff was the number 4 player on my board. Acuff was one of the guys that I looked at as a potential superstar in the NBA. So do I think the Nets got this pick right? No. But I think if you told me what guard in this draft would I feel like had the best chance of overcoming Acuff being a great player and still being just as good or better, I think Michael Brown might be my pick even over Wagler. Because I think the ceiling for Michael Brown is still enormous. I think that this guy is got extreme craft as a scorer, 3-level scorer, unlimited range. I like the size profile. Listen, his year at Louisville wasn't bad. He got hurt a little bit. It wasn't like he had a bad year. The team was pretty good when he played. He was fine. It just Acuff and Wagler and Kings Flemings won a million games. So he kind of just got lost in the sauce. And I kind of feel like Michael Brown, again, as I started doing more film work, getting ready for this, I feel like he started to become underrated. He's definitely in the conversation being one of the top 6 players in this draft, in my opinion, when I think about pure talent. Now, did you see it consistently? No. Did you see it? Are you concerned about the health? I can understand that. But people are just crushing the Nets. And I get it from the standpoint of, again, Acuff was my number 4 guy. But if you think that this is close, and I don't think that an insane person could look at these guys and think that it's close because Darius Acuff is a little bit smaller, I want to see how it plays out. I'm somebody who doesn't root for the Nets. I'm not someone who's hoping that they do well per se. But I didn't sit there when they took Michael Brown and said, okay, they're going to be in the tubes for the next 10 years. I didn't think that. I thought, oh, this is interesting. Michael Brown's going to go to a team. Again, do I love his vets? Not really. But he's going to go to a team where he's going to get real reps, getting to run the show on a team that is still, even with Randall and Porter, is still going to have plenty of shots for him and plenty of opportunities for him. I'm I want to see what that looks like with this kid. I really do. I think that this guy has a ton of talent. I told you he was rising on my board as I did more work. So, do I think the Nets goofs? I would have taken Acuff. I think he's just a much more sure thing. But there's a part of me that's you know what? For a general manager that has, at this point, I think nothing to lose. I think he could be fired probably any second now. In terms of he's clearly he's gonna make it through his offseason. But I think once the season starts next year, the minute it looks bad, he just may be gone. I'm if you really think Michael Brown is like that, I kind of like the swing. As crazy as that sounds.
Yeah, I think you hit on everything. I think everything you hit on makes sense. I understand. We talked about this. We talked about Michael Brown and weeks ago when it seemed like he was viewed below Wagler and Acuff and even Fleming's kind of coming into this draft process. The last a month or two ago, it seemed like you said, he was getting underrated a little bit, and I didn't know if I bought it in NBA circles because this is a guy that a year ago, if we had these conversations, was maybe the best guy outside of the big 3.
Yeah, he was ranked higher than Acuff and definitely Wagler, obviously, who was not even really a top 100 guy.
And so it's so we're talking about a guy who was consensus the best point guard in this draft coming into the college basketball season. Checks every box for what you'd want from a franchise point guard prospect in terms of his ability to shoot, his athleticism, size, passing ability,
working to pick and roll,
handle, wiggle, ability to read and pick and roll and make plays out of pick and roll. He checks almost every box. So
Yep.
He's just maybe not like a stalwart defender, but as I always say with point guards nowadays, you're not paying him to play defense. If he's as good as if you're as good as these guys are on offense, you're not playing him, not paying him to play defense. And so when it comes to Michael Brown, he checks every box. So from that standpoint, I understand it. It's what you hit on at the end. It's the risk involved, right? And is there less risk with Darius Acuff? And for this franchise, where with the Clippers, I understand that there's risk involved with Wagler, but I feel like the Clippers have nothing to lose at this point. I understand maybe the Nets are in a similar spot than the Clippers, but I feel like the Nets have just been so bad for so long that they need a triple, right? They need a guy that you know is going to be a double or a triple. They can't be trying to swing for a home run if you know that Acuff's going to be good. And it's still guaranteed. I mean, all these guys are rookies. You know, there's no guarantee Acuff's going to be some superstar. But I think a lot of people are more comfortable knowing what his floor is going to be a high level point guard in the NBA, even if he's not a superstar, whether he's limited because of size or range or whatever other deficiencies, or even health with Acuff, because I don't know. I think Acuff's health is a little bit of a question mark at times as well.
Sure. Yeah.
Michael Brown doesn't have those, maybe the proverbial ceiling attached to him. Sometimes it's a false ceiling that we put on these guys, but he doesn't have those limitations that you'd be worried about with Acuff. But it's the floor, I think, is viewed a lot lower. And for a team that took quite a few risks last year, particularly in a guy like Yegor Demon, who I think had a pretty decent rookie year for what you could have expected out of him. That was a massive swing that they took, and it was okay. Yeah. Again, they swung for the fences and maybe got a single,
right.
And then they kind of swung for the fences with the rest of their first round picks as well. Danny Wolf's an older guy, but he was kind of an experiment of a prospect, and then Drake Powell's a mold of clay, and then Seraph and Traore. Traore was a guy that was also a massive swing, and that didn't really work out. You want to see, like, again, we had 5 first-round picks last year, and maybe only one of them got on base,
Right.
Michael Brown's another guy that could be a massive swing and miss, and that's scary if you're a Nets fan, that you've had 2 years with 2 excellent drafts, and then the next 2 drafts don't look quite as excellent.
Yeah, you're gonna be in the lottery. You're gonna be back there.
Yeah, there's a good
whether
chance
or not you're in the relegation zone. You might even be in the relegation zone. That's how bad this team is. But you're gonna be there, and
right.
that's Kendall. The point you're making, which I don't disagree with, because again, I want to make it clear. I would have taken Acuff. I think Acuff. I think he's the floor is so much higher. I love his mentality. I think he would have been, for whatever. Brooklyn doesn't really, as a Nets, as an organization, doesn't really have an identity, but I think that he is somebody that would have been a really fun guy to have here in the city. But at the same time, this is the problem when you have a general manager who shouldn't be there. Because I think the point you're making is true. Like, I pointed to, listen, Sean Marks is a general manager who has nothing to lose. But you're right. The Nets do have something to lose. Like, the Nets as an organization have a lot to lose. Like, they
kind of can't afford to be bad again.
They can't afford to keep. They can no longer afford to keep screwing this up. Like, they have to, at some point, like you said, they have to get a star. They have to get somebody who's good, or at least somebody, not even a star, somebody who's good, somebody who they can hang around for, who can hang around for a little bit, maybe pass his rookie contract. And you're right. I think it's a fair question and a fair criticism. Is this the team that, like, this is the kind of organization that should be taking wild swings? I think debatable, reasonable minds can debate, is Michael a wild swing? Again, it's hard. Again, a reasonable mind can debate that it isn't. I could argue that it isn't. I don't know if it's a wild swing, but if it is,
it's not quite Yegor Demon. It's not quite.
No, it's not quite Yegor. Yeah, but I mean, to me, it was very clear they were debating between number 1 and number 3 point guard in this draft. And I think most people had Brown over Fleming's, and Burry's. So I don't think it's quite as, I think because, like, Brown's team didn't win, they didn't go far in the tournament, so there wasn't a lot of visibility. Like, even Burry's and Fleming's, like, there was high visibility for those guys. Those guys played on huge stages and played really well. So I think there was a comfortability about kind of understanding them. Like, I'll be real, like a lot of these people that are killing the Nets, I just don't know how much they really watched Louisville or watched Michael Brown. I
They
didn't
blame Nancy
watch
Dorner.
a lot of them live. I had to watch a lot of tape because I wasn't trying to watch Louisville like that. Like, I watched them against Kentucky. I watched them against Duke. I watched a couple of games. And some of these games he wasn't playing. So, like, so I had to go back and watch more games and watch more tape after the season was over because I wasn't catching them like that. So, I think some of the criticism, I think, is understandable, but I think some of it is stemming from, like, I don't think people actually know how good this kid is. And I'm like, listen, this kid can play. It's, can he be consistent? Can he reach the ceiling? Will he stay healthy? Again, when you talk about a back injury, that scares me. Like, those are questions that, again, you want to talk about, that's the reason why you shouldn't draft him? I would say, yeah, I understand that, which is why I would take an Acuff. But it's not his game. It's not his game. It's not his size profile. Like, his game and size profile is just he's a top 6 player.
And again, the thing that comes with Acuff, we'll talk about him in a minute with Sacramento, but the thing that comes with Acuff, it's not just the player, but it's the culture that you feel like comes with Acuff, right? There are certain players that they bring that with them. Whether it's like Cam Ward going to the Tennessee Titans, it wasn't just, we've got now a guy who could play quarterback. It's no, this guy is bringing that entire culture that he brought to Miami with him now to Tennessee. And you feel like Acuff could have a similar impact in Sacramento. Brooklyn now, like Michael Brown doesn't have that label attached to him. He went to Louisville. No. He was a really good freshman on a really good team, kind of fit into what they had. They kind of like Darren Peterson. They didn't really need him. Games he didn't play, they didn't really notice he wasn't there. Like, it wasn't. Yeah. He wasn't the program, right? Acuff went to a John Calipari led Arkansas program, and it became his program by February, and it became his team. And Calipari said, you take us as far as you can go, and that's a different.
And what did I tell you during what did I tell you? And I told everybody in the lead up to the March Madness, like, this kid is good enough to maybe overcome like John Calipari March Madness nonsense. Like, that's how good this kid was, and
High Point tried to,
and I think he did. I think he did because High Point tested it. You're right, that's probably a team that shouldn't have got to the second weekend knowing Calipari's nonsense, and he carried them. Like, so no question.
And so for a Nets franchise that has no identity, has no culture, it's risky, right? Like the Clippers,
it is risky, no question.
The Clippers have had kind of a messy culture, but they are at least. They're still Steve Ballmer. It's still the money. It's still LA. You feel like, well, we can figure it out. If we just have a mega talent, we can figure this thing out by itself. Brooklyn is not the Clippers, right? I think they're closer to Sacramento than they are to the Clippers in terms of the mess that they are.
Yeah, I mean, the Clippers have an identity, whether you like them or not, or think that they're being successful or not. Like, with the new arena, with the wall,
got a Hall of Fame coach.
Right, they have a real coach who like has a proven concept in terms of how to win games in the NBA. A general manager who's been around the league for like 30 years, has been running the team now for like 10 or so. Like, that's a team that team definitely has an identity. Like, whether they're good or not, whether you think they're in the right direction,
just need talent.
Is another question. Right, but they have an identity. The Nets, like you said, do not have any identity. The team, what are they trying to do? I don't know. What do they hang their hat on? I don't know. Their coach is brand new. They have basically a bunch of, like, I don't want to call them G League guys to disrespect them, but they have a extremely young team of guys who probably shouldn't be in NBA rotations. That's probably a better way to say it. Like, I don't know what they're trying to do. Yeah, and Michael Porter, and now they have Julius Randle. Like, what is that? I don't think anybody knows, and I think that's the reason why I understand people being upset. I will just defend the talent. That's my only defense is. We can say everything you want about him, and maybe Acuff is still just better. That is a reality. Again, I had him higher on my board. I don't think that this talent gap is nearly as wide as it's being made out to be. Now, it does not mean that Michael Brown won't bust, won't figure it out. Like, those things are possible, but that's the only thing I'll hold on. Boomer bust prospect, I agree with. Health issues, risk associated. I agree with all those other things.
As we always say, there's risk associated in not picking Michael Brown, too. Like, as much as we can say, it's risky to take this kid with all the red flags, because of the supreme talent that he also comes with, if you don't take him and you take Acuff, and Michael Brown looks like Damian Lillard by March, we're gonna ask ourselves, well, how did you
Yeah,
pass
why
on this
didn't
guy?
you take
I
the
mean,
6'4" strong guy who could
the
shoot
guy who
from
can shoot
35
from,
feet?
yeah,
Right. Like, I mean, like, that's what I'm trying to say when I'm like, I don't know if these people know what this kid's game is like. Like, I'm not. It's like, it's like we talk about this in the NFL draft. Like, this is the Julio Jones type receiver, where you could have questions about why wasn't he better at Alabama. It's like he's 6'4", he runs a 4.3. What are we actually talking about? Like, that's what we're talking about with this kid, and I just think I can't wait for it. With all that being said, I think if you're the Sacramento Kings, you may feel like your franchise has been transformed. Like, I'm not trying to be hyperbolic, but I'm being real when I say that. Like, the fact that they didn't have to move at all to get a guy who had number 4 on my board, who I argued about whether or not he should have been number 3 over Caleb Wilson. I'm like, congratulations, Sacramento Kings. Like, you found your franchise player. I mean, I thought that obviously they knew where they wanted to be. They knew the guy they wanted. It was funny actually watching the draft. I'm sure Malika Andrews was like, "Oh my God, the pick's in already. All right, well, I guess we can't even talk. Let's go." Like, Sacramento,
yeah, they ran it in.
We ran that pick in, man. I mean, they ran that in as soon as Acuff was still available. They knew exactly where they were going with that. Again, Scott Perry, he coached Darius Acuff Sr. Or actually, it's not Darius Acuff Sr. I think, but like his dad, I guess.
Darius
Acuff Sr. Right? Yeah. There's somebody who doesn't have the same name as a junior. I think Michael Brown's dad is not named Michael, which was confusing. Somebody is a junior, and then they showed their dad, and their dad's name was something different, and I was like, what's going on here? I assumed maybe the dad. I assumed the dad went by his middle name or something, right? Something like that. But I was very confused. Anyway, I thought it was Darius Acuff, but no, Darius Acuff, right, is Darius Acuff Sr. Anyway, sorry, Mr. Senior, Mr. Acuff, but Mr. Acuff played for Scott Perry when he was a coach. Again, we know all the Cal Perry ties to Scott Perry and his time with the Knicks, so this was a no-brainer. They also added Alex Caravan. They made a trade back into the first round to get him. He was somebody identified as a potential steal in this draft. In the second round, I actually like the idea of getting him late in the first round. You avoid short-term deals, avoid potential early restricted free agency, and with a guy who I think may end up being really good. And actually, I threw in Emmanuel Sharp in there because I think it speaks to what I think is an attempt by the Kings to try to be serious. Like, they got 3 serious guys, and they got guys who won in college, who are no nonsense, who have overcome adversity, and I think, again, the goal of the Kings this offseason had to be to remove the stench of what was one of the more rotten locker rooms I think I've seen in the NBA in a while. And not rotten in the sense that these were bad guys. They weren't getting in trouble or getting arrested or anything, any stupid stuff like that. But just in terms of basketball character, they had none. It was a bunch of veterans who I think thought they were way better than they were, or just seemed like they were there for a check and did not play at all in any kind of team concept. They were a disgusting team to watch this year. I think some of those guys certainly won't be back, but they got to get some youth and some guys in there that I think, again, are serious, and they got a supreme talent in Acuff who he takes the point guard role. This is the guy that, again, they've been asking for, basically. They had Schroeder and Russell Westbrook last year. Again, no surprise how that worked out. And now, this was the replacement for De'Aaron Fox. Now you have your franchise point guard. And I love that he's going to Sacramento. Like, this is the kind of guy I want to go send to a bad team. Like, I told you, I don't know if Darren Peterson's the kind of guy I want to send to a terrible team, a terrible locker room. This guy I would. Because I think that he's the kind of guy that can overcome whatever stupidity is happening around the team. And I think he's the kind of guy that actually could rally people. Where you're like, oh, crap, this kid is the real deal. Like, maybe I do got to get my act together. You've sung Acuff's praise even before I did. But watching him this season, he was maybe my favorite player to watch in college basketball this year. Guy can get to the cup anytime he wants. I'm just so impressed by his efficiency as a scorer because, we compare him to the likes of like a Stephon Marbury and some of these other smaller guards that I've seen the comparisons to, guys that kind of throwbacks like the early 2000s, and he does remind me so much of those guys. But when you look at his numbers and the high field goal and three-point percentages, like the percentages look like Steph Curry. Like they look they don't look like what Marbury and Iverson, those guys' efficiency numbers look like, which were not always pretty. So I just feel like if you're the Kings, man, I mean, this is not a show that's meant to look like Kings colors, but of course, because of the nature of the show, Kings, like, I think maybe this is a sign. Like, I mean, I just think you should be really happy where you got. And again, I love the Caravan pick. Caravan's a guy who I think adds floor spacing for someone like Acuff, who is a very good passer, a willing passer. Sometimes he's such a good scorer. I get mad that he passes the ball so much. I'm like, just go freaking score, man. Stop throwing it to Wagner and these other guys who can't shoot and Billy Richmond. Like, just go get a bucket. Like, Caravan's a guy who, again, another veteran guy in college, winner, willing to do whatever it takes. I think he's a better player in the NBA. I'm very curious about Emmanuel Sharp. He's someone that I didn't circle as a steal or anything like that, but he's someone that I just always was impressed with at Houston, and I'm curious if he sticks in the NBA.
This is a spot where he could come in and play.
Right, and that's the other thing. Like, these guys are going to a place where, like, there's minutes to be had. There are a lot of veteran guys who, again, won't be on the team next year, or perhaps will just be sent to the bench because of just, like, ineffectiveness. And they'll have an opportunity. So, great night for the Kings.
Yeah, look, we've talked about the Acuff Kings connection for weeks now. It's the perfect fit for Acuff, perfect fit for Sacramento Kings. Scott Perry played this thing beautifully in terms of establishing the connection and the relationship with the Acuffs going back decades. I guess he was thinking 20 years, 30 years down the line.
Yeah, but, was he Kang the Conqueror? Was he Kang the Conqueror? Did he know what was going to happen?
He remains. He played it. He played it well in terms of getting Acuff comfortable with the idea of going to Sacramento because that's not been a thing that we've seen too often. Of course, Tyrese Halliburton was kind of big on the Sacramento thing as well, but to have a guy who essentially was telling teams, I don't really want to go to Brooklyn, or I don't really want to go to the Clippers, and that's another piece of the Brooklyn thing too. Is like maybe Acuff didn't really want to go there. And that only adds to the thing of,
that's an aspect of this. I'm so glad you mentioned that because I didn't say that in our last segment talking about the Nets. But that's an aspect of this I am very curious about because as much as I can defend the Michael Brown talent, which I did and I still will, even though I think Acuff is more talented, I do wonder how much he really wanted to go to the Nets, like because it's a risk, and they knew they were going to get crushed for taking Brown over Acuff. Anyway, continue with Acuff.
And I just think it's a perfect fit. Like I mentioned, he's a guy who's a culture. He's a culture bringer. And I think that this is the kind of place that you needed. That we talk about not having an identity. Again, they've got a coach that was a TV commentator just 2 years ago, and Doug Christie, and nobody on the roster besides maybe Sabonis in terms of veteran guys that you really want to have to bring back.
Who they may trade now. They
and they may be looking to bring him out, get rid of him too. I mean, it's a pretty blank canvas that he's walking into. They've got some good young players. I mean, I loved Maxime Reynaud last season, had a great rookie year.
Yeah.
And Nick Clifford had a solid rookie year as well. Dylan Cardawell, who's an undrafted guy from Auburn, who also did a good job bringing in a nice culture. I think they want to kind of continue that train that they saw from last season with some of their young guys, and said that worked. Bringing in some of these guys from good programs and that had good college careers. Let's now bring in Acuff, and then let's bring in Caravan and Sharp. And like you said, let's bring in a kind of a winning culture. At the same time, I am familiar with the Sacramento Kings game, and when it comes to a guy like Caravan and even Sharp, I don't know. I've seen this movie before. I've seen the Thomas Robinson, the Justin Jackson, the Jimmer Fredette, where they've said, "Oh, we're going to bring these guys, and try and bring the culture."
Big name guys who
these big name guys who were winners in college, and saying Sacramento, they're going to be awesome. Nick Stauskas, and it's almost never worked. Now again, Acuff might be able to he might be. I think he's a talent that's more in the line with a Boogie Cousins, a Tyreek Evans, a De'Aaron Fox, not to mention all the Calipari guys. But I think he's one of those guys it's not about the culture as much as it is he's just going to be a great player. When you talk about some of those other guys, again, we'll see when it comes to Caravan. I like what they're trying to do. I like what they're trying to do. I thought it would have been interesting. I texted you that if they would have just taken Malik Thomas as well. I understand, they tried the Fox Monk thing, and it was a good it was good to sell on T-shirts, but it ran its course at a certain at a certain point in time. They maybe said we didn't want to do that again. But I thought that could have been interesting, especially if you wanted to really build around Acuff, go get his guy as well. But also there's questions about whether or not the Malik Thomas Acuff backcourt really even was a good fit, or whether whether Thomas was kind of stunted by playing with Acuff. So he might be better off in the situation that he's in Cleveland. So yeah, I think if you're the Kings, you gotta love the draft you had. Mainly because you got Darius Acuff, but on top of that, you also brought in two great culture guys in Sharp and Caravan.
Yeah, man, Kings. I think the future is real bright, and I think if you're looking at again picks for Rookie of the Year, I don't know how many wins are going to be there, but I think Darius Acuff will have an opportunity to put up some really nice numbers there. Another team that had multiple first round picks, they came into the draft with multiple first round picks. There are a couple of teams that added first round picks. Kings were one of them. Atlanta Hawks taking Kingston Flemings at 8. They then later 23 took Zuby Ejiofor. I thought this was a team that also had a really good night. I want to shout you out, Kendall, because when we talked about the Hawks a couple of weeks ago, talking about what they should do with 8, you basically hit the nail on the head. Backcourt shot creator, someone to.
There was a lot of Adai Mara talk at that time.
Yeah, a lot of Adai Mara talk, and there were some people in our comments on social that were like, "Oh no, we need big, we need big, we need big," and you were right on the money where they went, and I agreed with you, by the way. I said that I agreed. I thought that was where they can go. I wondered about Mara, but I was like, I don't know if 8 was going to be rich to take Mara there, and the question that ended up being true was, would they be able to get a high end guard at 23? And the answer would have been no. Because LeBaron Fallon was the last guy left. He was 22. They were all gone. So I think they realized, they were like, we want to get a high-end guard. We had to take the guy at 8. So they took Kingston Flemings. And then they took Zuby Ejiofor at 23. I basically kind of what happened. Yeah, and then they got Vasar at 52, which was kind of bizarre. I don't know what happened.
Sounded like they worked that out with the agent.
Had to, right? Because I'm like, how the hell is the guy who I had right outside the first round? I think he was like 33 or 34 on my big board. I was like, how did he land that low? And he was getting drafted by overheaded guys that I just didn't have on my board. Just guys just weren't, like Toby Lawal.
I didn't do a whole lot of Toby. Yeah, I didn't do a whole lot of Toby.
Yeah, we went right to the same guy. I'm like, Toby Lawal. I'm like, I'm sorry. I just, and like, it's funny. I don't know if you were thinking the same thing, but when Felix Akpara, and shout out to him, when he got drafted, I was thinking in my head, I was like, man, we got to see some wild names tonight. And then you texted me, being
I immediately texted. Yeah,
this is where we're getting.
We're at that point in the draft. The UDFA
guys. I'm like, yo, that's what I was thinking. I saw Felix Akpara. I was like, oh damn, I didn't realize he is draft eligible. Yeah, he's a guy that can be taken. I just didn't even occur to me that he could maybe be a guy that went in the second round. And then the names that came after that were that he looked like a great pick at some of the guys that came after that. But yeah, no, I mean, I thought that the Hawks did really well. I mean, I think to get one of the few guys that had like legit size once they settled for like an undersized 4-5 and Ejiofor was good. I really like Ejiofor. I think Ejiofor fits very well with the identity that they're bringing. I mean, they got two guys that can defend, two guys that are aggressive on that side of the ball. Kingston Flemings, as I told you, I don't mean it as a diss, but he reminds me of like a taller Deuce McBride. Like, this is a guy that can get his shot off against anybody. I love that about his game. I wonder if he finishes well enough at the rim, and if he can actually get, if he has enough wiggle to actually not have to rely on so many jump shots. Which is why I like, of the top guards, he's the one I'm less high on him being a star. But I love his approach. I love the way he attacks the game. He's gonna be a great culture fit. He's a great culture fit, I think, and I think even his game, again, like for a team that, I mean, you become very intimate with the teams that you watch your team play against in the playoffs. Like, listen, the Knicks end up dispatching the Hawks in the last 3 games fairly easily, but you see the Hawks' strengths and like the way they get after you defensively. Again, the Knicks made it look easy the last 3 games, but like there is a real potential there, and I think getting a guy like Flemings, who plays that side of the ball so well, Zuby Ejiofor plays that side of the ball well, And these are two guys also I think who will play well off of Jalen Johnson. We know Jalen Johnson is basically like a point forward. That's great. 'Cause I don't know if Kingston Fleming is like a natural point guard. Just like CJ McCollum, just like Miguel Alexander Walker. Like, I guess they could use that guy, but I think the fact that they got a guy who can still relieve and play point, but allow Jalen Johnson to still be the focal point of the offense and will be a adept spot up shooter. Will play high end defense. You're not going to lose nearly as much because the problem was when you take Dyson Daniels out, he's such a great defender. It's like whoever comes out, you're losing a ton. I'm not saying he's Dyson Daniels, but he's good. So I feel okay. You won't lose so much there. I thought the Hawks had one of the better drafts. I thought they did really well. I was pissed when they took Zuby. I was like, because he was one.
Yeah,
The Knicks probably never would have taken him, given what the Knicks strategy ended up being. But not knowing that for sure, I was like pissed. 'Cause I was like, he was right there.
You could hear the groans in the.
You heard it. You heard it. Like Garden was pissed. They knew, or
Barclays.
Yeah. Which like, by the way, were you surprised at how much like I guess they don't have a choice. But like Barclays, they act like that was the Garden. Like they were like celebrating every time the Knicks were up. They was showing all the Knicks fans. I'm hearing the DJ.
The
DJ yelling, talking about the Knicks. I was
like, they do all this when the Knicks were up.
Right, and I feel like they typically like when they do the draft, they hype it up as like this is the home of the Nets, and you would have thought. I think it was like a Freudian slip. You would have thought that was the Garden because of how the presentation was. I don't know if the NBA is involved in the presentation. That's why it looked like that. It just seemed weird. That part of it.
I think it was because the Knicks won the title. Is what I gathered.
Okay.
Because they won the title and they're in New York, because they don't do that they'll like ESPN will do that when the Knicks are up because they know the crowd's going crazy and there's always a lot of Knicks fans. But like the NBA doesn't do a whole thing. But because you guys have won the title, I think they were like, let's play into that, given we're in New York. It's a weird look for Brooklyn, certainly, but
I mean, yeah,
when's the time they're going to win a championship?
Yeah, I'm sure Joe Tsai was probably fuming having that happen in this building. But again, get better. What can I tell you?
I have a take that I think the NBA's got to do like the NFL and really what they used to do and rotate where the draft is.
I'm starting to feel like as a New Yorker, I used to always yell at you for that take, but I'm starting to feel that.
It feels like we're getting kind of stale doing the same thing every year. I'm like, there's a lot of good NBA cities that would get behind the draft. But no, I mean, in terms of the Atlanta Hawks, I agree. I think they had a decent night. Kingston Fleming is a good fit for where they were picking. I think the Hawks wound up in a tough spot, given just where the board was and what they needed. And, I saw a lot of, and I kind of agreed. There was a lot of talk from the, a lot of the retrospective on the Derek Queen trade saying, look, I'd rather have Derek Queen than Asa Newell and Kingston Fleming. And I'm like, look, I mean, where we sit right now, I kind of agree. That could change in a year. Kingston Fleming has a great rookie year. Queen takes a step back. Who knows? But
Joe Dumars right now, like they call me a madman.
Yeah, they call me a madman. But yeah, so if you're the Hawks, you would have liked to have maybe been able to get one of the A-list kind of guys in terms of the talent level. But they were kind of one pick away, and all those guys were kind of gone at that point. And Fleming was the closest guy to that. But again, they needed a lead guard. And Fleming's, you mentioned, is the exact kind of guy that will be able to come in and play a role right away. He did that at Houston. He stepped into a ready-made veteran, contending kind of team and was able to get the ball from day one and be the guy. A team that had Milos Uzan and Emmanuel Sharp, who were a championship runner-up backcourt. And those guys had to defer to a freshman that wasn't a top 10, 15 recruit. He was a McDonald American. He was a 5-star, but he was a lower level McDonald American prospect. So again, quite the guy to get if you're the Atlanta Hawks, given the year they had, and of course again Zuby and Vasar, in the front court are two guys that are ready to come in right away and play. You're not talking about a development curve for those guys. So I think it's a pretty good draft if you're the Atlanta Hawks, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'll listen, I had Bradenberry's ahead of Fleming's in my board, so that's probably, from looking, I would have went guard. I agree with that assessment. Will we wonder if Berry was the better fit? Will be a question I'll have.
I had Phylon. and Sturts higher.
Right. Mm.
But you know, but yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Well, that would be the question for the Hawks. But I mean, again, I think this is a good draft. So like, we're gonna get in some mistakes, I think, soon. But like I didn't. I mean, the Michael Brown thing's the one that we talked about. And I actually defended it. I think I don't know how many like there are gonna be some grenades. I just don't know if I see them in the top 10. Like I don't know if they're like they're gonna develop when they actually get on these teams and realize, oh man, this guy stunk. But I like a lot of these picks. I really thought, Kendall, as we kind of look ahead towards how the rest of the lottery went, you had Morris Johnson at 9. That was the real stunner. I felt like
that was the first. That was the first shakeup.
that was the first. Holy crap, Morris Johnson. But I feel like when we did the mock draft, I started to say, man, I'm wondering about, will they go Michigan now they hired Dusty May? Like we
Yeah,
talked about that.
I didn't think they would do something like that.
Yeah, and I was like, I think they might go Michigan here. Like now,
Now the big question is: do you think it's because of the Dusty May thing, or you think this is a guy they would have taken?
so what I think
No matter
happened,
what.
Kendall, it's a great question. And by the way, they got Soldier of the Law with the second pick. What I think happened with this pick is I think that they liked Morris Johnson and they
And they
liked
fell in
how he
love with
was
Dusty
utilized
May.
at Michigan. And they were like, I think this guy needs to be our head coach. And what better way to bring in this guy than like to hire the guy that was his coach when we're not sold on Jay Kidd? That's what I think happened. I really do, because I don't think that Morris Johnson was not being, and you know me, I was as big a Morris Johnson fan as there was. He was not being my top 10. At highest 10, like definitely not 9, not inside the top 10. So I listen. I love the player, love the player. The fit is a little weird. I'm wondering where the Dallas Mavericks are getting their shooting from. Because Cooper Flag is not a laser. He shot better as the year went on, but he's not a laser. The centers are not stretch guys.
The defense is going to be like, I think they kind of made.
Nah, defensively they're going to be insane. Yeah,
Of course,
defensively I think they're going to look like
but-
Michigan. I think defensively they're trying to look like what Michigan did, right? Like with Lundenberg, who went 11, Johnson, and Daimara. Defensively, I think this is a very exciting front court. I'm like, holy crap! Good luck trying to score on these guys. But the fit offensively, man. I mean, maybe they're more confident in Morris Johnson's shot than maybe other draft evaluators have been. I've been someone who has been optimistic that he'll be able to shoot the ball pretty well, given more volume. But yeah, I mean, this is a team that I think clearly needs backcourt help. I was shocked that they didn't take Braden Burries. I mean, not shocked once, obviously, the Michigan connection, but like just, I thought backcourt help was needed, and I thought there were guards available still that could maybe nine's high for Phylon or those guys, but like I don't think it would have been crazy. I was a little surprised by this. I'll be honest.
Yeah, I mean, look, I was surprised as well. Again, I wonder if this is them, again doing. I agree with the order of operations. I don't think they like hired Dusty May and say let's just get one of his guys.
I don't think. Yeah, I don't think
it
that
reminds me of. I mean, look, I mean when the San Francisco Giants hired Tony Vitello from the University of Tennessee to be their manager last year, a lot of it came together when Buster Posey was doing. We had drafted a bunch of guys from Tennessee, and they were evaluating. They kind of fell in love with the culture that those guys had over there, and said, "Why don't we just hire him?
Right.
And why don't you just come over and coach these guys?" So,
Right.
I think that's a more natural way of it happening, a more organic way of it happening. I feel like, again, I keep harping on this is a very important draft and a very important year for some of these teams because of the way the draft process is going to be going forward and the fact that the next two drafts aren't very deep. I just feel like if you're the Dallas Mavs, I know they feel comfortable with the fact that they feel like they have a superstar in Cooper Flag who might be an all-star next season. But I still feel like they have to be in the star accumulation game. I'm not sure if they're quite at the point in their rebuild where they
You don't think
are.
Morris Johnson could be a star?
I think Morris Johnson is a great role player, which on a good team could wind up being a guy who's a star, right? But to me, it feels like when the Mavs are competing with the Spurs and the Thunder in however many years, like he feels like he's going to be a starter potentially, but maybe he's their fourth or fifth best guy. But I'm wondering who's the second guy next to Flag, who's the third guy next to Flag. Like in this draft, they could have made a move to get that guy, and they didn't. I don't think they even tried.
The reality is that guy is Kyrie Irving. Now, how long is he gonna be on
Yeah,
the team?
yeah.
We have no
It's
idea
just, and the
what's going
problem
on there.
is, what's the timeline of this team? Because I don't think it's realistic for the Mavs to think that they could compete in the Western Conference at a high level in the next 2 years. Uh,
Do you think that that's
and
fair
so
given
even if Kyrie is
what we
that guy,
saw? Do you think that's fair given what we saw from the Spurs? Because I think some people would, and this is a
well,
conversation we've had on
it's
Generation Sports
because
Talk.
of what we saw from the Spurs. I don't think they have a shot, frankly. But yeah, I see
Well, I'm
what you're
saying,
saying.
look,
Like,
we
yes,
talk about with Wemby
you should
being this
dream big.
generational talent, and we've had the questions whether it was on our podcast. I talked about it with Matt Game Perloff, like how quick does do you have to start like competing in a real way for the Spurs? And like people were saying like 2 to 3 years, and I thought that was insane when they said that. I said, I think that's insane. Like I know how good he is, and I'm a Wemby guy. I thought it was insane, and they were in the finals in 3 years. Like that's why I asked that question because maybe they feel like
maybe they view more
they're
as Stefan Castle, but like that's where I just say like if I thought next year's draft was better, and I thought okay maybe the Mavs aren't going to be good next year, but like they can get that supernova guy next year. They still could. Again, drafts are drafts, and you also have to look at who was on the board and was there a guy available that you felt had that kind of upside. Because I don't think Braden Burries necessarily projects as some superstar guy either. Ament would have been the biggest swing, and that's maybe what I would have done. But he would have been the guy that if you take Ament, you're saying to yourself, if this works in 2 years, yes, this is a legitimate potential running mate, potential cornerstone to have next to Cooper Flag. Morris Johnson also projects as a guy that's going to be a cornerstone, of course, but again, more in a role player sense, more in a. Mm-hmm. Unless you think he's like Jalen Duren, like unless you think he's just going to be so good with what he does, a Bam Adebayo, that like he's going to develop into a star because of the physical tools. I question that, but that's why it makes me wonder where what do they think? Where do they think they are at this stage, and are they trying to be more competitive in the immediacy than maybe I would have thought? Because again, they don't have next year's draft's not going to be great. They may be trying to win next year, and again, maybe that means they're not keeping. Maybe that means they are keeping Kyrie, but I just have questions about how good you are in that situation.
Daniel Gafford, he just signed an extension. It's really reasonable money. Basically, he's got 3 years, $40 million. I wonder if he's somebody they look to move potentially. Because I wonder if they actually want Morris Johnson to play some center. Again, there's with Dusty May and how he played, there's a reality that they just may want to have a really big front line. But I wonder if Gafford or Lively become more attainable this offseason, and do they try to find another backcourt kind of guy who can be a scorer? Because I think they're lacking offense. This to me, as exciting as they are defensively, this is probably even with Kyrie, one of the worst offensive teams in the NBA. I mean, Kyrie, Max Christie, Cooper Flag, PJ Washington, Derek Lively. Your bench is Morris Johnson, Daniel Gafford. I don't think they're bringing back Klay Thompson and Brandon Williams at the point. Ryan Nembhard also went. Like that's not a good offensive team. And Mavs were not a great offensive team this year. So I think those are
the other
questions.
Reality is, again, just like Atlanta, they were hit hard in the lottery, and they didn't tank enough, and they got hit hard in the lottery, and they wound up in a spot where all of the supernova talent guards, in theory, were gone. Again, you could have reached for a guy, of course, but the obvious picks, like Wagler, would have been a great fit. Michael Brown, Acuff would have been like the perfect fit. Flemings would have been a fit, being a Texas guy as well. They were all gone. And so, if you were going guard, again, Burry's more of an off-ball guy, more of a two, more of maybe a potential role player. He can be a star in his role, but not a guy that you maybe think is going to be a 25-point scorer. It's, now you're dealing with what you got. And maybe a Daimara and Ament are probably the guys at that spot that had the most upside. But, I mean, look, Dusty May didn't want a Daimara. I mean, I'm sure they listened to him. Like, I'm sure he said, if all these Michigan guys that all would have been in the mix, that Morris is the best fit.
Yeah, that's another interesting too. The fact that the coach was there, and then Morris Johnson was the guy, even though he was always seen as a third cog in that group. But as I kept telling you, I was like, this guy, I was falling in love with this guy every time. First of all, every time I watched Michigan, I fell in love with the guy. But then watching tape, I was still like, I don't know what people are missing with this kid. Last thing on the top 10, and we'll kind of broaden it out to the rest of the first round after this before we get out of here, was the Bucks. You know, now that we're post Giannis, we saw what they ended up doing. They actually ended up taking Braden Burries first with the number 10 pick. Nate Ament ended up going to 14. You were someone that was very high on Nate Ament. Do you feel like a lot of people will rue today they let him fall to 14 to the Bucks? And do you think the Bucks are now in a good spot with these two young guys to begin the new era post Giannis?
Yeah, I mean, I was confused when they took Burries. Um, I texted you. I was like, "What are the Bucks doing?" Because they had just made that trade. I thought they were going to take Amen. To be able to get him still at 13 is not. In hindsight, it's a guy you would have. If they would have took him at 10, I would have been like, good pick. Yeah, but they took Burries, and I was like, oh, what are they doing? So maybe they played it well because they would have got Burries at 13. I'd have been like, great value, you know.
Right.
So look, again, they're another team. I think they were in the worst part of the draft. I said this on our show on Monday, I believe it was. I was like, I think that's the weakest part of the draft is you know 9 through 13 largely, and so they had to pick the guys that were available. They passed on the two Michigan guys, Lendenborg and Mara. They could have maybe took Mara. I don't think Lendenborg would have made sense given his age. Mara maybe, but they felt like they didn't need or they didn't want the big guy. Burries and Ament, I think, are admirable picks. I maybe would have gone with Steinbach with one of those picks, or again, obviously I like Bennett Sturts a lot,
Well,
but
the
they
reality
didn't
of the
have a whole
Bucks
lot of options.
now, yeah, the reality of the Bucks now is, I mean, they have Kel'el Ware, and they still have Miles Turner, who
Yeah,
I don't think he's going anywhere, and I don't think he's easily movable with that contract.
so you didn't need
So
another 5 man.
right, so a 5 man, I don't think they were going 5. They also picked up Jericho Sims' option today too. So that guy looks like he's gonna have a career just being a third string center everywhere he goes. So I liked. I mean, I'm a Burries guy. So I mean, after the Bucks, I thought they landed a guy who I think will fit very well as a swing guard coming off the bench for either Ryan Hollins or Tyler Hero. Um, it's tough with this draft. There's not bigger guys with some more size. Like their backcourt is small. Besides Kevin Porter, who I don't think he's gonna be back. Like Hero, Rowland, Burries, not the biggest backcourt. Yaku Jonas has got some size at the point guard, but where's your 6'6" guy, 6'7" guy playing the backcourt? They don't really have that. But I do think the mix of guys they have there all can score. They all can get out in the open court. So I was big on the Burries as a player. I think he's gonna be a steal. Like I've said this pretty much. I said this during the college basketball season. I said this guy is becoming my favorite player in this draft. He is so good in the open court. He's a big shot maker. He is unflappable. He plays great defense. He plays both ways. He's just older. I really feel like that's the only thing that we're talking about. He maybe is not quite as flashy. Like he's not gonna have the 40-point explosions that you saw from Michael Brown, some of these other guys. But the guy's a player. And listen, he's going to a dumpster fire. That's what the Bucks are in reality. So I don't know how that's going to work out, but he's the kind of guy I would trust to figure it out, even in that kind of place. So I liked the Burries pick. Borderline loved it. I mean, he fell to 10. I think I had him like 7 or 8 on my board, so that was good. And listen, I think getting Nate Ament, I feel better about him at 13 than, no offense, at 6. Like I'm being honest. Like he was somebody I did not see as a top 5 or 6 or 10, even 10 talent. In general, not necessarily talent, but in terms of what I saw, because that's not always talent. There's a lot of things that go into why a guy is a certain place on my board. There's a ceiling there that's high that I understand, but the proof of concept, I didn't see it consistently enough at Tennessee. But you already had a first round pick where I think you went with a guy that I think most people deem as a safer pick with the first one. I think this is the opportunity to swing for the Grand Slam with Nate Ament. And I actually kind of think, listen, I don't think he should really necessarily, I don't know if he should learn from this guy per se, but I actually think like Kyle Kuzma is probably a good guy for him when he's playing well to like kind of pattern, like that's the kind of guy he probably should want to play like. like a 6'9", 6'10" guy who can shoot the ball a little bit, versatile, can attack the rim, can play multiple positions. Like Kuzma he's been a dog for the Bucks. I don't, it's a shame what's happened to Kyle Kuzma in his career. He was at one point a very good player, but like there's a proof of concept there that I think maybe he could see up close and personal when Kuzma having his good nights, that maybe he could see where he can fit in. So listen, the Bucks they're not a good team. I'm looking at this roster right now. I'm just like this is not going to be pretty this season. But I do think that for a team that was drafting 10 and 13, not necessarily what you want to be drafting when you're trading Giannis, I think they ended up doing okay.
I don't think you'll take it. I mean, look again. Amen. I think is a guy that there's a real star upside there. And Burries, there's like a potentially a false ceiling that maybe he winds up a star as well. Which in that range you'll take. I think you would have loved to have been able to try and move up, but I don't think any of those teams in the top 7 would have been willing to trade down.
I really think that they tried. I would be stunned if they did not try to get in that top 7. And I think that was what I talked about when I said I just feel like, and that was the word coming out of the draft, that like you were trying to get in that top 7, just hang up the phone. There was no way. Given the lottery rules going forward, given the players that were here, you just had no shot.
Yeah, and there was a bit of a drop off.
The value was so high on those for good reason because of the talent disparity that you just couldn't get there.
There may have been a conversation about should the Clippers, and look, I wouldn't have done it because I love Wagler, but there's maybe a conversation with, if you're the Clippers, would you rather have Braden Burries and Nate Ament or Keaton Wagler, right? And that's a conversation that I think is fair. But otherwise, I think all these other teams desperately needed the guys they got, so I don't begrudge them for not taking that package.
When we look at the rest of this draft, Kendall, when we look at the first round, second round, what were some other picks that you looked at that kind of raised eyebrows or made you kind of question? I mean, one of the teams that I wanted to highlight was Oklahoma City Thunder. That was an interesting
best draft. Yeah, it's best draft for me.
You think it's the best draft?
Yeah. This felt like a Howie Roseman Philadelphia Eagles. Like, how did we let this happen? Like, how did we let the Oklahoma City Thunder wind up with an Imar and Bennett Sturts?
I'll be real. The Mara pick, I liked. I didn't like the Sturts pick at all. That backcourt is Mortal Kombat. They have a guy who listen, and shout out to Nikola Topic. He's had a ton of issues. And I say issues like not off the court. I mean, he's had health issues. But like, they have a guy who was a first round pick that was highly regarded that just can't see the floor. Where is any guard playing for this team? Like, to me, that was a pick that felt, I don't know, that it felt to me like you were like trying to like do the behind the back and step back one-legged. Like, what do you
like arrogant kind of pick.
It felt like an arrogant pick to me. I like the Mara pick, and I think the Mara picks to me is told me how much Wemby has spooked them. It was like, okay, like, oh, there's no question we're gonna take the 7-3 guy that's here, given who we just lost to. And we talked about why it made make sense for them to do that when we previewed this draft. So the Mara pick, I was fine with. I thought that was the right pick. I thought the Bennett Sturts pick was weird. I'm being real. I would have preferred Allen Graves there. I would have preferred them just going double big in reality, because Jade Will has been good, but I think you can probably upgrade there. I didn't love the Sturts pick. That was the one that I knew you were gonna love what they did in that draft night. I'm only giving them a half a good score because I thought the Sturts pick felt weird. I would like Kareem Lopez more. Like, they don't have any wings too. They have all these small guys. Like, and I know it's a style of play. That's how they won. They won a championship. Maybe who the hell am I to say this? But like, for a team that may lose Lou Dort this year, I was kind of waiting for them to get like a guy with some size on the wing. I know they just would have missed out on Dalen Swain. I think would have been perfect there. I don't know. That draft was weird to me. The first pick, he went higher. I think you had him super, super high. Most people had him in the 20s. I think he ended up going where probably you feel very good about him as a talent. But the Oklahoma City, I thought had an interesting night.
Yeah, I think with Sturts, look, as somebody that loves Sturts' game and loves him as a prospect, I don't love him being in Oklahoma City because I don't know if he's gonna play a whole ton. Um, and his ceiling now has been capped. Like he's no way he's gonna be like the franchise point guard there. I mean they've got Shea. So
You're right.
the best case scenario for Ben Sturts is he winds up getting traded in a couple of years, frankly.
Which is
But
why I'm
I
like,
mean,
I don't know
look,
how you can say they had a great draft.
when it would start with a Diamara, I think the Diamara pick. I mean, look, great value. First of all, while it does feel a lot like, they just took the 7-3 guy, and I think that's fair, and it's going to be viewed as the Wemby the Wemby effect, for a team that obviously is going to be battling the San Antonio Spurs for the next 5 years. He's also was probably the best player available.
Yeah,
I liked Amen. I had at the highest on my board. I probably would have taken Amen, but again, given where they are for that team, I totally understand them taking Mara, and I had them taking Mara at 12. The when it comes to Sturts, I think the conversation I think the talent. If I was running the room, like the talent would have, and where I had him on my board would have just been like, given we don't have any needs, frankly, we don't even have any roster spots, like, and certainly nobody we take here is going to immediately come in and be our, a guy who's gonna, again, Mara. We have questions whether Mara is even going to play a whole lot, given the depth and the roster that they have. I think one, you have to take the best player available, but two, you also have to then ask yourself, does this guy fit the way we play? And I think certainly on the offensive end, the shooting that he gives them, there's a Caruso aspect to the way he plays on offense, where he can play off the ball, he can play on the ball, he spaces the floor. They lacked some ball handling, in the playoffs when AJ Mitchell.
That was basically because of injury, though. Like that's what I'm trying to say.
It was because of injury,
like Jalen Williams was hurt, and Mitchell was hurt. Like I mean, like
you're right. And again, that's where this thing becomes awkward. But I think that's going to be the question for this team, is just you're drafting these guys, whether it be Mara and then also Sturts, and even Otega Owe was another guy that I liked. These guys are all long-term insurance rather. They're all, because certain guys, the contracts are going to come up on some of these guys. Are you going to want to pay Cason Wallace, or are you going to want to pay AJ Mitchell or Jared McCain? Some of these guys are going to have to make decisions on. And Nikola Topic hasn't even had a chance to get on the floor, and he's going to be coming up as a free agent soon.
Yeah,
you now have Sturts in your farm system, who's, I think, the guy who's gonna be ready to play from day one. I will see during the summer league. Sturts is just one of those guys for me that, depending on how he looks at summer league, like the conversation could shift quite a bit, and he might, if he's not immediately coming in and lighting it up at summer league. I think there's gonna be a conversation about. I'm not gonna say did we miss, because again, nobody's writing anybody's career off based off summer league, but if the learning curve gonna be larger than we thought. But if he comes in right away and he looks great, like, remember when Reed Shepherd came into Summer League and looked awesome, and we thought immediately, like, this goes from, instead of this guy being some, long-term prospect or project, how does this guy help the Rockets next year? Right. I think that's going to be the question with Sturts. If he looks great, they're going to have to find ways to try and get him on the floor. But, yeah, I think this guy, Sturts at Iowa, you came away thinking, man, this guy plays like he looks like he'd be a perfect fit in OKC or in Boston or someplace like that. Like, he looks like that's the style of play that he plays and would fit. And for OKC to be able to get him without having to really give up the farm, I mean, they were at 17, they move up one spot to 16. It kind of just falls to their lap. It might not work, but again, they have just like the Philadelphia Eagles, they have the luxury of being like, we can take him, and if it doesn't work, there's no skin off their back. But if it does, this is a guy that I think has, in theory, that even though he's an older prospect, because of the uniqueness of his profile, I think he has the largest upside. And it's a guy that, if it hits, is a rotation player potentially from day one.
Yeah, it's just such a loaded backcourt, and I'm trying to be realistic about what they are. Now, there's an off season, and that's the thing about the draft that's so interesting. Is an off season who's to say some of these guys that are here are going to be here? Is AJ Mitchell still going to be here? Is Alex Caruso signed long term, so I don't think he's going anywhere. He's basically got 4 more years left on his deal. His deal basically just kicked in. Again, there are real questions about whether Lou Dort is around, but Lou Dort, I almost don't even count him as a guard because he almost isn't really. He's a football player.
That's the Otega Owe is the Lou Dort,
right
insurance.
Right. So I just wonder with a team, it's an odd thing. Like this is a team that probably shouldn't have 2 first-round picks or should be drafted
and
that
also,
high.
frankly, is Sturt's also SGA insurance? And I'm not saying that to say he's going to be as good as SGA but like that's the one guy that's kind of irreplaceable for them. And you ask yourself like, oh, Sturtz doesn't defend like Caruso or like Wallace. It's closer to AJ Mitchell. Like Mitchell's kind of that guy now, but again, when he got hurt, they didn't have another guy that could play point guard. I mean, again, Wallace is just not really a point guard, and McCain's certainly not a point guard. Is Sturtz now the guy that you say when SGA is not out there, he's going to play 35 minutes a night, but when he's not out there, we have a guy who can run the team and give us and can play that role. So I think that's going to be something that he brings as well.
Philly's the team I want to circle as well. 22, LeBaron Philon. Philon
was a great pick.
Yeah, I thought it was a great pick too. This is not a guy I wanted to see go to Philly as a Knicks fan. Some people in Philly I thought today was interesting were wondering about the future of Tyrese Maxey because of this pick. There's some stuff with, I guess, who made a trade today? Oh, Charlotte. Charlotte created a $40.5 million trade exception, which is the largest trade exception in the history of the NBA, which just happens to be Tyrese Maxey's salary next year. I mean, I'm just
and they have a million draft picks.
Right, they have a million draft picks. I'm just telling you what is being said. I'm not trying to tell you that that's going to happen or I think it's going to happen. I'm just telling you that's what people, Sixer fans and people who are and Hornets fans are circling about what's going on with Charlotte with the trade they made, trading obviously LaMelo Ball, and of course they drafted a point guard, one of the picks, with Christian Anderson. So windy hands, right? Exactly. Like what's going on here? I love the Philon pick. The fact that he got 22 is just insane to me. Sorry, I look at him as a guy who, I
have 10 on my board.
Yeah, you have him 10. I think I ended up landing him at around 12 or 13. I told you, I told you all season the guy reminds me of Lou Williams. The fact that he's not playing in Philadelphia where Lou Williams played for so long. He played on a lot of teams. But he played on Philly for a ton as well. He might have won 6th Man of the Year there. I know he won a couple of places. It's fitting for sure, but Philly, I thought of the teams we're gonna look back in this draft and we're gonna say, how the hell did that guy get there? Just like Maxey, we said it, and we said the night Maxey went where he went, we was like, how the hell did that guy land there? I feel like I'm looking at this Philon pick, being like, how the hell did he got there? And credit to Philly because if they're not trying to trade Tyrese Maxey, which is probably the more likely scenario that they're not trying to trade him, good for them to still draft him. Like some teams do this whole thing of we got too many guards. Like I know I just did that thing with Oklahoma City, but Oklahoma City is a different scenario. They have they have only guards.
They have 8 guards.
Philly doesn't have any good players basically outside of the starting 5. So I think anybody that can play, give them a jersey. So the fact that they did not look say, oh, are we worried that we're getting another smaller guard to play with our others? To hell with that. This guy's a baller.
And they took a lot of heat. Mike Gansey and the Sixers front office took a lot of heat for this pick. From a lot of people that just felt like this is not a position of need, not a player of need, and I disagree.
Silly.
I just think you watched. Both of you played them in the playoffs. My team certainly had a bigger problem with them than yours team did, but they certainly are.
You had 8. Your team had 8 problems. The Knicks had no problem.
Yeah, you guys had no problem.
Yeah, you guys had 8 problems. We had none problem. We just got them out of there.
They desperately need more guys, that can handle the basketball and make plays. Edgecombe, there's just so much pressure on Maxey, but then because there's so much pressure on Maxey and he has no help, a lot of that then fell to Edgecombe, who did an admirable job, but it was just a lot on his plate as a rookie. Paul George, a lot on his plate for a guy at his age and ability at this stage of his career. Embiid obviously was, and health. Embiid obviously you can't rely on to be the offensive hub that they would have hoped he would be 2-3 years ago. So adding and again they got rid of Jared McCain, and what's interesting is this is the pick they got in return for Jared McCain. So now you kind of look at the Jared McCain trade similar to the
I'm kind of
Derek Queen
like,
situation.
yeah, I'm
Like,
like,
oh, well, would I rather have Phylon and a couple of second round picks or Jared McCain? And you have more contractual control with Phylon. I mean, McCain, we've now seen McCain play in the Western Conference Finals and look like damn near the Western Conference Finals MVP. So
yeah,
from that perspective, it's like I just don't know if Phylon's even an NBA player yet. So yes, for now, I still would rather have McCain in theory, bird in the hand, worth two in the bush, but it's still a very live issue. It was not a live issue just 2 months ago. We would have
it looked
said
like it's
these
dead.
guys,
Yeah.
these idiots. Why did they
These guys are
trade
idiots,
McCain?
right? Exactly. You took the words out of my mouth. These guys are idiots, right? Now I'm like, ooh, hold that thought.
Yeah, I mean they got a guy
Not
who
so,
was 10 on my board. Like
yeah, not so
I
fast,
would have
my
done
friend.
that trade.
Yeah,
in the
yeah,
moment,
exactly.
as bad as he looked, McCain in Philly. So yeah, I look, it's a great fit, and I also love just him being in that environment, playing with Maxey and playing with Edgecombe. It's going to be a highly competitive backcourt. I think that's what made Edgecombe. I thought Maxey brought the best out of Edgecombe being in that
I agree.
environment, playing with Paul George, playing with Maxey, having that guy being under his wing. And I think it's going to bring the best out of Phylon because
I
Phylon is a
agree.
super talented, super competitive guard in his own right. And he's not going to wither away and be like, well, he's just only going to raise his game and raise his level being with those guys night in and night out and in practice on a daily basis. So, again, I think this is a great environment for him to be in. He's not, again, similar to Sturts, the ceiling now is limited because he's not going to ever be the franchise point guard. But I think he's going to have a really good career playing in Philadelphia, and the fans are going to love him. I mean, we know the way he plays and the culture that they have
Yeah.
out
Oh,
there.
yeah, yeah.
He's going to be a fan favorite.
Yeah. You mentioned Cam Carr earlier, so I'll bring him up here. Lakers 24. This was a trade with the Knicks. Another guy. No idea how he lasted this long. I'll be real. But the one thing I will say is this what we kept saying about this draft was true. I mean, the NBA loved these guards. They loved these point guards. So guys like Christian Anderson, and you had Sturts higher, I had him lower. Those are guys I would, and even Fine may be questionable. Those are guys I probably didn't think would have went ahead of Carr, but I think the NBA is they either fell in love with these guards. I also think there's a reality. I think like I told you before, I think the Spurs and the Knicks made these point guards a lot of money. I think people
Yeah,
saw
and
like
also
what
these teams looking as bad as they did in the playoffs because they had no point guard.
yeah,
These
because they
teams,
had no guards. Yeah.
a lot of these teams wanted to run the no point guard lineup,
Yeah, it was
and
stupid.
a lot of them lost because of it.
Right. Pistons didn't have anybody besides Cade. Again, OKC lost to a team that, they have a million guards. They lost to a team that had more guards. So they just rallied up. The Hawks had a great regular season, but then again didn't have
We
enough
saw
point
teams
guards.
like
So they got
Houston,
one.
Witten got Bruce Thornton. He was the best. There were not a whole lot of great on ball guys left after those guys at 22. Bruce Thornton was the next guy at 31 for a team in Houston that desperately needed a point guard.
Yeah, and he's not a guy that I had anything close to a first round grade on, but I just think they were like, we just need to get a guard because we don't have enough.
Yeah.
So they were like, whoever's available, and this is a weird second round how it went. So, yeah, I mean, so Cam Carr, I think he kind of was like I think he was a casualty of that, but I think the good news for him is I think he's going to a great situation. Playing for the Lakers is kind of a double-edged sword. I think people do like to go there, but I think it is sometimes for players are careful what you wish for, because for a city that's fair weather, their fans are not. At least Laker fans.
It's
are
a
not.
fishbowl. It's a fishbowl environment.
It's a little bit of a fishbowl environment, and it could be tough for a young guy. So I don't want to make it seem like it's just all sunflowers and rainbows playing for the Lakers. But a lot of guys do like to get there, and I think for him to be a guy who his skill set is his athleticism and his potential as a floor spacer, that's Luka Doncic is who you want to play with.
And the defense.
I also think he kind of want to play for JJ Redick. So I feel like what may have been a frustrating night for him. And listen, this is a guy at the end of the day, he kind of came out of nowhere. Like, he was a guy that I thought flew up boards, but maybe he didn't. Maybe people weren't as moved by that
Yeah,
combine
the
performance
combine
as
thing.
everyone else
I
was.
guess it doesn't matter
Yeah.
anymore.
Or maybe,
Used to.
this guy was like a second round guy, and maybe they're like, okay, like now this is why he's the first. Like we don't actually know, but those like you
Right.
and I, especially me, who really thought that this guy turned himself into a lottery pick out like Jalen Williams, that didn't happen. But I don't think that means that he had a bad night per se in terms of where he ended up landing. He went on a team that's a playoff team.
We also
He's gonna
again,
play with a team that needs his athleticism because we know Luka
yeah,
and Austin Reeves, who they just re-signed, as good as talents as they are offensively, they do lack some athletic pop, so they're gonna need that in the backcourt. So he'll bring that. So I you know he's not. I don't think he's a finished product. I don't know if he's somebody that's playing a ton year one maybe, but I like where he landed with the Lakers. And I'm a big Cam Carr guy.
yeah, and he's also a Bill Duffy guy as well, and so it's possible
It's
that
another.
they
And
did
Luca's
some.
rep that Bill Duffy, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
and so it's possible that they also did
Made
some
some
shenanigans.
That's
Yeah,
possible. That's a good point. I
I
didn't think
saw a
about that.
funny. I saw a tweet. I saw a funny tweet. Somebody was like Bill Duffy trying to getting Cam Carr to the Lakers. It was that video of Rich Paul in the car telling teams about Malawash talking to what's the guy from Phoenix, the owner,
Oh yeah,
talking
yeah,
about
yeah.
we're gonna get Ishbia. We're gonna get him down at the 10. But no, I mean I think Cam Carr's in a great situation. If you're the Lakers, you also kind of think about replacing Max Christie. Well, you lost at Max Christie and
Yeah.
gaining Cam Carr. It's definitely lights out for Dalton Connect. I feel like
Yeah, it's over.
with this pick.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
He will be somewhere else probably, or continue to be buried in the rotation.
yeah, they wanted a guy who could give some of his shooting, but then also add play defense.
Yeah.
And Carr is going to do that again. A great fit next to Luka, best player available. I think they probably would have gone big if he wasn't there. Maybe Isaiah Evans, but I think they just took a guy who was too high on their board, and I think it's a good fit. San Antonio, man, I want to talk about the Spurs real quick.
Yeah,
I think San
let's get 'em.
Antonio had, I think OKC won the draft, but I think San Antonio had the second best draft of anybody else in terms of just value and where they're picking. Of course, they didn't get AJ Devansa, they didn't get Cam Boozer, they didn't get Darren Peterson, but to come out of this draft with Jaden Quaintance and Terrace Reed, and then also Jacoby Gillespie, who I really liked. You talk about the needs for a team we just watched play a couple weeks ago. They got just destroyed on the glass by the Knicks. To add Jaden Quaintance and then Terrace Reed are two of the best rebounders in this draft. Two of the most physical bigs in this draft. And then when you think about Quaintance, a guy who is certainly a project, one of the youngest players in this draft, but
He's still 18 years old.
yeah, still 18. So somebody was like, "How is this guy an 18-year-old sophomore?" I was like, "Well, yeah, good question.
Yeah.
That's why he didn't come out last year after his freshman year." But this is a guy that, from a talent perspective, is maybe a top 10 talent in this draft, and that's saying a lot in this draft because again, very competitive, very talented class. But if fully healthy, he's a guy that maybe slots in right after Darius Acuff, frankly. And for the team like the Spurs, of course, there's the injury history, and there's the question about how ready is he given the age and the medical. But they could take that risk knowing that they were already an NBA Finals team. And then they went and said, well, we still need front court help. Let's go get Terrace Reed, who's a guy who's a ready-made five-man.
He ends up being kind of your insurance for Quaintance, too, if Quaintance is just, if there is, like, serious medical stuff moving forward.
Yeah. He's a guy that's ready to play right away. It's funny. I don't know if you saw Terrace Reed's draft video when he got picked, and he put on a Celtic hat, and then he realized, oh, actually, I'm going to the Spurs. I wonder if the Celtics told him, like, we're going to take you, and we were one pick after. And I wonder if he thought he got picked by the Celtics.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because then they went and then took Chris Nack.
The next
way more of a project. Yeah. So I do wonder if Celtics were eyeing Terrace Reed, but
sounds like that makes sense.
Yeah, I was very disappointed. You just saw my reaction when we took Sinak. I was very disappointed. I've gotten over it because, again, I watched the rest of the second round and was like, well, who else are we going to take?
Yeah, exactly.
But also, I love the Jacoby Gillespie pick. I mean, that was a guy that I, had targeted as a sleeper, and given their need at the point guard position, I mean, they were playing Jordan McLaughlin in the Western Conference Finals in key situations
Yeah.
because of injuries. I think Gillespie's a guy that's going to be good enough to play maybe early. Again, this is a team that's not going to need him to play early. At least you hope they don't need him to play early. But if they have to, like, I think the Rockets, again, they took Bruce Thornton. I think they should have took Gillespie. And that's something that will get litigated, I think, maybe 2 years from now. But I think Gillespie gives them that Van Vliet type guy that they obviously missed last season. But Thornton's a little bit bigger, more of a 2 guard, more of a combo. Maybe they feel he can.
I also think Gillespie is the kind of guard that I wouldn't be afraid of putting him in front of those Lions in that practices and like in workout. Like it's gonna take a special person to get your ass kicked by those guys. And that's probably what will happen to him. Yeah, to go into that locker room with those guards as good as they are in training camp and in those workouts and getting ready for the season.
And then Wemby.
And then there's Wemby, right? So like I just think that's not going to be a place where it's not going to necessarily be, I think, be the easiest for like young guards who come in and thrive or find their footing. Gillespie, I think, has the makeup and the game to take licks and also give some of his own. So I agreed with the Gillespie pick. I agreed the Spurs I thought had one of the best nights. I love that they went double big. Again, like sometimes like I think there was a fear for going bigs for a while in the drafts because it felt like there are only few of them that play. But I think what we saw with the Spurs were they clearly lacked size outside of Wemby, like functional size, I'll say. Like because again. I don't know what happened to Luke Cornett. He played well during the regular season. He was great for the Celtics the year before. I don't know what happened to him, but he was terrible in the finals. He was unplayable, and they had to keep playing him because they didn't. I don't want to say they didn't have to keep playing him because I think they should have actually tried Plumlee or only one of them guys, but they felt like they had to keep playing him. So here we are. And now I said before when we previewed them, I said they gotta those old guys that they didn't want to play when Cornette was awful. Like they can't just get a spot just being goons on the bench, and and being hype men. Like they gotta get real players in there. So Quainance is a supreme athlete when he's healthy, and flips the kind of he's the kind of guy that kind of flips the court with his athleticism when he's on the floor.
I mean, think about the defense now. Like,
right,
you throw him. I mean, they could throw lineups with him and Wemby out there together with Castle and Harper.
Right,
and
exactly.
Throw
the athleticism and the athletic speed, height, weight profile is insane. I mean, and Tyrese Reed. I mean, they lost in the NBA Finals when their best player got buried under the rim by Mitchell Robinson. So, like. And then the backup center wasn't bringing enough physicality. So if you bring Tyrese Reed in, you're not going to have to worry about physicality and strength. That's not going to be something, even as a 22-year-old, that's not something you have to worry about with him. So I agree. I thought they had a really great night. I want to go back up before we get out of here. Just wrapping a bow on the show. And thank you guys for checking us out. This is Difference Makers. Those on Buzzer, very familiar with the show, every Thursday, 6 p.m. But, of course, we're doing this show live on YouTube and live on X and Instagram. This is a show you get exclusively on Buzzer every Thursday, 6 p.m., though this is the end of the draft, so I don't know when we'll do this again. But Yasso Lendenborg, I made a joke about who was a rookie that was most likely to get knocked out by Draymond Green. I told you Yasso Lendenborg was number one. But I also told you that he actually also may be the kind of guy that actually would want to go send to Golden State because I actually think that attitude, that nastiness is something that Draymond Green will actually may end up loving initially, and may end up kind of being the perfect mentor for him. And he's probably the fit I can't wait to see the most outside of like the top 3 guys, like who everyone wants to see those guys, because the guy. I mean, you want to talk about plus minuses. I was even doing more numbers, looking at like the guys who had the most impact from a plus minus standpoint. I mean. His plus minus on Michigan, I mean, he had one of the best net ratings in all of college basketball last year, along with Braden Berry, another guy who I really liked. The guy is just, his impact on winning was obvious. And this is a team, the Warriors, who that's really all they care about is how do you impact winning. And listen, he's going to go to a team where, despite the older age on Steph, he still brings a lot of attention. We know Draymond Green and his ability to move the ball around and get guys open shots. And Lendenborg played on a team that was kind of an all-for-one, one-for-all kind of team. if the personality fits, I think that this is a great place for him. I know Charlotte was a place I
And
would
then
look
look,
at with Lindenborg, but I'm
it's a
happy that he
locker
landed
room.
with the Warriors.
Yeah, it's a locker room that certainly has experience with quirky personalities. Head
Yeah,
coach that has experience with it. They're not going to be intimidated by having the question of how does he fit into the locker room.
yeah.
They've got Jimmy Butler to worry about. So again,
Yeah,
they're
and
not
he's the kind of
Draymond.
guy that I think he's
They're not
going
too
to a
worried.
place where it's like, again, like how much are you gonna really act up with these guys? Like he's gonna do
Yeah,
something because we just know he
we'll see.
talks.
Yeah, yeah,
He's
yeah.
gonna
It's
do
like
something.
Jordan
But
Poole.
but
But again,
but when
it doesn't
Steph
matter.
or Draymond Green says, "Hey man, you got to cut it out," like I just think this is the kind of place
Yeah,
where
I think
he's like
he's a winning kind of player. Yeah.
he's gonna understand. Okay, I gotta get in line.
I also will throw in real quick Charlotte getting Steinbach and Christian Andersen is a pretty good
Yeah,
draft. Those guys played together on the German national team. Obviously,
you know
they
how much
moved
you
on
know how
from
much I love Christian
LaMelo
Anderson.
Ball. Yeah, you're a big Christian Andersen guy. It was a questionable pick when they had LaMelo Ball, but then of course they get rid of him, and now you bring back Kobe White, and now he can kind of play under him. Again, just the culture healing in Charlotte. You bring in two guys that play together, that know each other, and Steinbach and Christian Andersen. Both, I'm like to say Steinbach was a winning player in college. He certainly wasn't, but obviously playing for the German national team, they had a lot of success.
Yeah,
And Christian Andersen is a guy coming from a winning program. And Steinbach was a highly productive player and a high motor player at Washington. I can certainly give him that. I think you're certainly, again, talking about the revitalization of that culture, and of course, even bringing in Nas Reed as well. They certainly need a franchise player. I like Con Knippel, but I don't think he's a franchise player. Um, but they've got everything else. It kind of reminds me of the Detroit Lions rebuild. You know how they just kind of slowly but surely adding good
yep,
pieces.
yeah. And in Detroit, Ibuka Okore at 17. This is a pick they traded for. Like they needed backcourt depth. Like they needed somebody who can actually run the
Yeah,
point. And I'll be curious how much he plays his rookie year. Like, will they feel confident enough? I hope they play
I
him.
feel like they have to. Yeah,
Well, I mean,
there's a
you
rich
say
pick
that,
to take him.
but then, yeah, I know it's a rich pick, which makes me think they will. But I just know Dennis Jenkins again has gotten a lot of time, and he was their backup point
Yeah,
guard, and he was really good. He's just, again, to me, he's not. He's not. He kind of reminds me of Deuce McBride. Like he's kind of. I don't know if he's a natural point. He's a good player, and he's a smaller guy. He's
I
one of
would
those
have
little
taken.
guard point guards.
I would have taken Phylon. We know they liked
I would
Okori a
have too.
lot. I wonder what the story is on Phylon. Of if it's other stuff not related to basketball. We know the Alabama program's a little renegade.
Maybe.
Or if it's or if it's basketball related. I wonder what the question is about why he fell. Because again, we saw a run on point guards with Sturz, Okori, and Anderson, and the teams. I mean, 19. If it certainly circled Lopez, so it's not like he fell that far, but just based off where a lot of people would have had him, it is a little bit lower. So I think that's gonna be one of the big questions that comes out of this draft.
Yeah, it's gonna be, man. I can't wait for Summer League. Summer League comes next week, so we'll probably be doing some kind of content around that as well. But I just want to thank you, Kendall, for this journey throughout the NBA draft season, doing this show. I want to thank Buzzer for giving us the opportunity, this platform, to create whatever we wanted with this show. Shout out my guy Chris Dunn. Got to shout out Justin Tyler. Chris saying basically, hey, we want a draft show on Buzzer. What it wants to be, it can kind of be whatever you want it to be. And I thought we did a really awesome job. And again, I thank you, Kendall, for joining me on this journey to do this show. And there's no reason for difference makers to have to go. I mean, there's gonna be more NBA drafts coming. So, and Buzzer ain't going anywhere. So. Keep it locked. Make sure you follow us both on Buzzer. I'm EJ205 Prep. Kendall's New Gen Ken. Make sure you follow New Generation Media for those watching on YouTube who probably like I never know you guys did this show. This was a Buzzer exclusive. We kept the Buzzer exclusive. I thought for the last one, with the draft over, I thought it'd be good to maybe infuse it on YouTube and get more people to Buzzer to what we guys have been doing. Buzzer is the place to be, man. We're doing original content, a lot of the noise without a lot of the nonsense that you get from X and other platforms. And whether it's live content, whether it's just social videos, whether it's just social commentary, this is where you want to be. So head over to Buzzer, BZZR. Make sure you go to buzzer.com to sign up. Make sure you download the Buzzer mobile app. And make sure you follow your boys, EJ Stewart, Kendall Stewart, and of course, New Generation Media, because we're locked in, man. And this is going to continue to be a fun journey with seeing the future of what we're able to do on Buzzer. But again, for those, also make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel, New Generation Media X, where we're live as well. EJ_Stewart, where you'll find me. Kendall's New Gen Ken. Also follow us on Twitter, New Generation Pod, and follow me on Instagram, Action EJ, TikTok, Action EJ as well. That's going to do it, man. I want to thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of Difference Makers, the recap show, recapping the NBA draft. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. Again, maybe we'll do a pop-up during the Summer League. We'll figure out, another time to do this. But this draft season was fun. I think it's going to end up being maybe a historic one because of just how many great players I felt like this draft had. And hope you guys were entertained and informed throughout this entire draft season. For Kendall, I'm EJ Stewart. Take it easy, guys. Peace.